So, folks, there is a third-party candidate in this election named Jill Stein. And Jill Stein recently was interviewed by Mehdi Hasan over on Zateo. I highly recommend, by the way, you go subscribe to their actual website because they have an amazing slew of exclusive interviews and stuff over there. It's really, really good. I'm not gonna break through that barrier for you guys, so you guys have to go subscribe, check it out yourselves. But they just put up yesterday the full interview that they did with Jill Stein a few weeks ago, and I thought it would be worthwhile taking a look at it because right now we're really seeing the election roll into high gear. Okay, we're really seeing the full brunt of everyone's political priorities coming to bear, and it is a lot. It's a lot to take in right now. But one of the persistent things I am seeing among disillusioned leftists is a tendency to glom onto Jill Stein as an act of vengeance, essentially, in an attempt to do some kind of retribution to the wider Democratic Party. And really, the issue here is that isn't how our political system works. And that's really kind of the unfortunate reality undergirding a lot of this. If Jill Stein's candidacy does wind up costing Kamala Harris a state or a swing state, we are in big, big trouble. Not just domestically, but internationally. Like, it is really difficult to put this into words here, but I'm going to give it a shot. I recently saw a very impassioned plea that's been making the rounds on social media amongst leftists about why you should try to essentially torpedo the Kamala Harris campaign, listing a lot of the same reasons you hear elsewhere. Largely, we can't reward the Democratic Party for poor behavior. We cannot be complicit in genocide. We cannot allow this greater evil to persist. And in this regard, it was a greater evil for the Palestinian people. And it was a very, very impassioned plea. And I'm not going to go over it on stream right now. I'm just going to summarize it because I feel like that's more effective. Because and this guy's getting choked up. He's crying, and like I think that comes from a very genuine place, and I don't want to argue with that emotion, because he's entirely entitled to that reaction to the world because it's really bad. But the issue that I take with that entire line of thinking is the idea that a fascist taking over the military-industrial complex of America wouldn't have unequivocally bad outcomes. Like, we really cannot overstate the danger of a fascist authoritarian taking control of our military. If the checks and balances are gone, if he is endorsed by the courts, if he is, not endorsed, anointed to dictatorial status by the courts, and Congress is impotent to stop him, he can effectively do whatever he wants. And this is the guy who has been pledging to exact an even greater toll on the people of Palestine, the people of Lebanon, and the people of Iran. This is a guy who is absolutely pedal all the way down, pedal to the metal, gung-ho for genocide in all three of those countries. Yeah, guy saying he's going to be a dictator on day one. And you can say, oh, well, he doesn't really mean it, or, oh, you survived the last Trump presidency, you'll survive this one. And it's like, well, some of us didn't survive the last Trump presidency. And some of us will also be in big trouble if Donald Trump were to ascend to head of state once again. And when I say some of us, I include the people of Palestine in that. This is a guy who gave the Golan Heights to Israel, a part of Syria. He gave it to Israel, saying, yes, you can have that. We acknowledge that as yours. He moved the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, which is not where any of the embassies are. They're all in Tel Aviv. And this is a long-term goal of the Israeli government because they want to lay a greater claim to all of Jerusalem. Trump literally calls people he doesn't like a Palestinian as a slur. And not only that, he has made deals with his donors, and we know this because he brags about it, to give them the West Bank, to give the state of Israel the entirety of the West Bank, to recognize a future annexation as official. And this is really, really just the tip of the iceberg. This is just the stuff we know about, okay? One of the things I wanted to bring up here, and I don't know if I have the clip ready to go at the moment. I think I have it right here, though. Is it... Oh, Benjamin Netanyahu. God, the joys and heartaches of having too many tabs. Here it is. Here is Bezalel Smotrich from a recent documentary talking about his long-term goals. And if you recognize the name Bezalel Smotrich, that's because he is currently one of the most powerful politicians in all of Israel. Okay, he's part of the war cabinet that consists of like 3 people now. Okay, here he is.
אני רוצה מדינה יהודית.
שזה אומר מה?
A Jewish state.
זה נורא נורא
A
מורכב.
Jewish state. It is very complicated. It is a state that operates on behalf of the Jewish people. The sovereignty of the state of Israel
ים ונגמרת בנהר.
starts at the sea and ends at the
שבעצם
river.
אנחנו גם מוצאים
Sorry.
של ישראל מתחילה בים ונגמרת
Starts at the sea and ends at the
בנהר.
river.
בשלב הזה
Is that all at this stage?
שבעצם אנחנו גם מוצאים
Or do we want more beyond the river in the next stage?
עבר הירדן, בשלב הבא.
בסדר, לאט לאט.
Okay. Bit by bit.
כתוב בחז"ל שהעתידה
It is written that the future of Jerusalem
עתידה ירושלים להתרחב
is to expand to Damascus.
עד דמשק.
זאת אומרת, אנחנו...
רק ירושלים.
Only Jerusalem until Damascus.
עד דמשק.
בצלאל סמוטריץ' a une vision
That is him talking about the Greater Israel Project. And if you haven't heard of it, it is essentially the settler colonial project that goes beyond Israel and the occupied territories and into all of the surrounding countries. Into Saudi Arabia, into Egypt, into Syria, into, effectively the entire region. It is an insane goal, but he explains here in this clip exactly how he intends to do it, and that is bit by bit. Getting one piece at a time. And this is what Donald Trump would help facilitate. This is like an ongoing nightmare, not just for the people of Palestine, but for every country in the region. And it's not good. It's bad, actually. I think facilitating that and encouraging that and speeding up the genocidal destruction of multiple peoples is actually bad. And Donald Trump would facilitate that. Whereas I think we have a shot of actually convincing Kamala Harris to stand down on these issues, to pressure Israel on these issues, and to move the United States away from its insane foreign policy right now. And those are our only two options. Those are our only two options. It is either Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. There is a 0% chance that Jill Stein wins. There is a 0% chance that Cornel West wins. There is no other option on the table right now. We are stuck between a rock and a hard place.
I pledge my allegiance to the Riverboat Jack channel. Please deliver me from the crime of being a white name.
Well, here's the issue, Alan Smith. Even if Jill Stein doesn't get 1% of the vote, if she gets 0.5% of the vote, that is still enough people to potentially make the difference between Kamala Harris winning or losing a state. And I just really, really need to put out there that punishing the Democratic Party, I'm actually in favor of that. I'm in favor of that if it doesn't lead us to worse outcomes. But that's exactly what it does here. It leads not just us domestically in the United States to worse outcomes, it leads to worse outcomes for people in the Middle East. You punish them by beating them in primaries? True. So, like, and again, I've said it so many times during this election cycle, but if you are really interested in breaking the two-party duopoly and making third parties possible, then you have to organize on a local and a state level to get electoral, to get ranked choice voting, okay? You have to get ranked choice voting. That is how you get and make possible third parties. We can do that on a state-by-state basis. That is what our system requires us to do. But if you aren't turning out to do that, and you're just showing up every 4 years to complain, oh, we still don't have third parties, time to vote third party to do what? The reason, or the reasoning, rather, that third parties currently give is that they want to get to a certain threshold so they can get federal funding for their political movement. That federal funding is a drop in the bucket. It is maybe large relative to the size of those political parties, but the issue is that they are nowhere close to hitting those thresholds. And when you look by every single metric on all of the available third parties, with the comedic exception of the Libertarian Party, they are so unserious that they have only been declining in power for the past decade. So this is all a preamble to talk about, to really hammer home here that Jill Stein is not your ally if you are trying to, be an activist for the Palestinian people. She is not your ally. She is a grifter who turns up every so often to shill for a book, and act as a spoiler candidate. That is effectively what she is. If you want the best for the Palestinian people, she is your enemy. Her political campaign has come out and said that their goal is to have Kamala Harris lose the election. If you value the queer people in your life, Jill Stein is your enemy. She might say all of the right things. She might whisper every sweet word into your ear, but she is functionally your enemy because her function within the systems as they currently exist is to fuck you over and to fuck over the people in Palestine and to fuck over basically any kind of progress we might be able to make here, any kind of forward momentum that activists in the United States might make. Because do you think activists are going to be more successful under Donald Trump? No, they're not. They're not at all. Donald Trump wants to deploy the military to fucking shoot you if you're an activist. He wanted to do it last time, and the only reason that didn't happen was because there were adults in the room when he wanted to give those orders that told him no. But he has an entire plan this time around to ensure that the only people around him are yes men who will do exactly what they are told because they know that they will not be held legally responsible for any of their actions. He'll just pardon them. So that is my 2 cents here before we jump into this interview, because I see a lot of really well-meaning people gravitate towards Jill Stein and movements like hers, and it breaks my heart because she is not there to help you. So let's take a look here.
That's cast for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump is an endorsement of genocide. It is an affirmation of genocide.
Lay out for me the steps whereby I go into a voting booth, vote green, and the genocide stops.
Let me put
I don't
it
see that
very
happening.
clearly. We are creating a very organized coalition that is here for the long.
Like the question Mehdi asks in this interview is, I think, fundamental, right? Because if there is no functional way that a vote for the Green Party would actually end or mitigate any kind of suffering, then it is not, then functionally that vote is not for that purpose. That vote is for something else. And I think it is Jill Stein and her political movement co-opting that vote for some other purpose that is nebulous and ill-defined, and in my eyes, somewhat duplicitous.
Long haul.
That's right. They were Democrats that were sending cops to campuses to beat up kids on my campus, okay? Coming in riot gear to remove people from encampments.
Yeah. When people were dying en masse from COVID, when he was praising Nazis, doing domestic terrorism, as Butch says, did you ever at any point say, maybe I got that one wrong?
Oh, no.
You said in November 2015, as Assad and Putin were massacring Syrians in their tens of thousands, quote, the US should be working with Syria, Russia, and Iran to restore all of Syria to control by the government. That's the Assad government.
That was an unapproved statement, which was taken down the moment it was.
You seem to have a lot of things online that you don't approve. Would you tell your supporters at home, vote green everywhere, but in those 3 swing states, vote against a domestic terrorist?
I would say.
Oh boy. Okay. This is going to go places.
Let's go back to 2016 for a moment, when Donald Trump narrowly beat Hillary Clinton in the US presidential election. There was one specific politician, a lefty third-party candidate who faced a lot of backlash after being accused of playing spoiler and handing the election to Trump. I'm talking, of course, about Green Party presidential candidate Jill Stein, who famously won tens of thousands of left-leaning votes in several key swing states that year, exceeding Trump's margin of victory over Clinton in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania.
See, does my preamble make a bit more sense with that specific bit of information provided by Mehdi here? Does my preamble about how she acts as a spoiler, she functions as a spoiler despite, you know, her rhetoric?
Had all those
Stein
votes gone to Clinton instead, Trump would never have won the Electoral College nor the presidency. Now, Jill Stein has always insisted that she did not cost Clinton that election, that most of her voters wouldn't have even turned out that year if she weren't on the ballot. Democrats, unsurprisingly, don't agree. And they're super mad that she is running for president again for the Greens this year in another super close race between Donald Trump and a female Democrat, this time Kamala Harris. Stein and her running mate, the Muslim American historian Butch Ware, are calling for an end to the genocide in Gaza and, perhaps unsurprisingly, have the support of a growing number of Muslim voters, which could make a huge difference in crucial swing states like Michigan. Here's the thing, though. Stein isn't going to win the presidential election. She's polling at just 2%. So will her candidacy give us Trump? Again, is she right to say Democrats and Republicans are all the same? And what about her own contentious record? Earlier, I sat down for an in-depth interview with Jill Stein and her running mate. Now, some of you may think she's a spoiler who doesn't deserve platforming. Others may be so enamored by her that you don't think she should have to answer any tough questions. She's great on Gaza. Well, I disagree. It's important to do a wide-ranging and challenging interview with a presidential candidate. So here it is, my sit-down, tough but fair, with Green Party presidential and vice presidential candidates Jill Stein and Butch Ware.
I think that was an excellent introduction. Like, I'm not mad at Mehdi Hasan asking her hard questions, because I think more people need to be asking Jill Stein tough questions instead of, I don't know, treating her like she's a buddy. She is not your friend. She's a politician.
Dr. Jill Stein, Professor Butch Ware, Green Party presidential and vice presidential candidates, thank you so much for joining me on Mehdi Unfiltered.
Great to be here.
Appreciate you being here. Jill Stein, what is the Green Party offering the American public in 2024 that the Democratic and Republican parties are not offering?
Well, for one thing, the American public is clamoring for more choices, so we are a choice. Yep. And we are a choice that's not bought and paid for by oligarchs and billionaires and the usual suspects and AIPAC and the war contractors. And all of these are very hot issues. And what we have with Democrats and Republicans, with Democrats we have lip service on the key issues that people are in crisis about, but not solving the problems, not at all. In fact, taking further steps away from what the public needs. We are not getting the health care we need. Over 60% of Americans are living paycheck.
True, Paladin, that is a fair point. If Kamala wants to win Muslim voters back in Michigan, there's a path to do it. Stein is a spoiler and a Russian proxy, but she can spoil because of the vulnerabilities that Harris created for herself. Yeah, exactly. Like, this is why I think that as we narrow down the days to the election, we're probably going to get some Hail Mary moves from the Harris campaign, but it might be too little too late. We'll see.
Check to paycheck. Half of all Americans are paying up to 50% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. We have incredible crisis going on. And despite that, we have a Congress, Democratic and Republican, and leadership in the White House that is spending half of our congressional dollars, which actually amounts to $12,000 per household, according to Jeffrey Sachs, if you calculate it out, on this endless war machine, which is not serving us, and of which the genocide in Gaza is really kind of a microcosm of what's wrong with this imperial foreign policy.
So, Butch Ware, you're a historian of Africa at the University of California, Santa Barbara. You're a prominent Muslim American scholar. You're not known as a Green Party stalwart or politician.
Sure.
What made you want to join this presidential ticket?
I'll be honest, if you had given me probably 100 years, I wouldn't have volunteered to run for office. But when I was called upon to enter into really the fight for all of the things that I've been writing about and researching and organizing in both academic and activist and artistic environments, right? I've always been about connecting people to the resources to strive for social justice. So when tagged in by Dr. Jill Stein to run on this ticket, I vetted the party platform, and one of the things that I discovered actually is that my oldest friend from childhood, Sean Young, which I had known for a long time, Annie Young was actually the first elected Green Party official in the state of Minnesota. She served for 20+ years. She was my backup mother. I knew all about the Green Party from childhood. And what I learned from Annie Young, who is a legend in the state of Minnesota, in fact, we went to Annie Young Meadow and had a moment of silence in her honor. I found out that Annie Young was one of Dr. Jill Stein's mentors in the Green Party when she came aboard. So all of that is just to say that I learned early on in my life that the Green Party doesn't really have politicians, it has public servants. And when I was tagged in to public service as opposed to...
Yeah, but the issue that I have with this is that if you looked into this issue, then you would know that the Green Party has been losing those public servants for decades. Like we peaked like 25 years ago when it comes to Green Party officials, and now it's been on the decline. There are like 100 fewer, and there were only like 250 to begin with.
just an academic and activist role, yeah, I'm not going back down from a fight.
Jill, you mentioned Gaza. A lot of supporters of Israel say Israel is being unfairly targeted by the left. It has a right to defend itself as a Jewish state. You are a Jewish critic of Israel. What do you say to those who condemn the left for being not anti-Zionist, but anti-Semitic, they say, in their criticisms of Israel? And just out of interest, also, you're a Jewish critic of Israel. Do you consider yourself to be a Zionist?
Absolutely not. I grew up a Zionist. It was just part of growing up Jewish after the Holocaust, where the genocide of the Jews was a very big deal, and where opposing genocide and understanding that genocide must never happen again, not to anyone, was really critical to my upbringing.
Oh, Jill Stein was a doctor for like a quarter of a century.
And my understanding of the world, and
she worked as I guess she also worked as an instructor at Harvard. I didn't remember that, but huh.
You know, like all good Jews, I was taught that Israel was a land without people and a people without a land.
Doctor of Internal Medicine.
I had accepted that, but as I became active politically, especially with the Green Party, where a lot of people were paying attention to this issue. In 2006, we took a stand against apartheid, against occupation, and on behalf of boycott, divestment, and sanctions in order to end the occupation and the ethnic cleansing. So it's, you know, I have very much become aware that Zionism is not Judaism. And the most anti-Semitic thing one can say now is that it is anti-Semitic to oppose genocide. In my view, saying that it is, you know, anti-Semitic is an absolute slap in the face to Jews, and Jews of my generation who grew up in the wake of the genocide. You know, that
sounds very scammy. I mean, I don't think it sounds very scammy. She like graduated top of her class from Harvard. Like, I guess she got degrees in psychology, sociology, and anthropology, and then practiced medicine for 25 years and became an instructor of internal medicine at Harvard. So I don't think that's the scammy part here.
That's really inseparable from our Jewish family.
There are plenty of things to criticize Jill Stein about. I don't think that's really one of them.
Values, but from human values, from Muslim values.
It's interesting you mentioned Jews of your generation. There's a big generational gap amongst the American Jewish community where young Jewish Americans are on campus protesting right now and supporting the Greens in many ways. But are you hoping, I assume, that a lot of not just young voters, progressives, but a lot of Muslim and Arab American voters will vote Green this year because of their outrage over Gaza? And I wonder, have you got any evidence to support that contention that people aren't just upset, they're going to ditch the Dems and vote Green over Gaza?
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to hope. We ran the numbers, right? So Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, Dalia Mogahed, has actually shown us, given us the statistical breakdown. These are all publicly available figures. So if you take the three swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia, in the 2020 elections, these are all similar demographic states, large African-American populations, large Muslim population.
Oh, but Tori, I think that basically what she's referring to is that a lot of Democratic lawmakers will call students protesting against the genocide anti-Semitic because they're criticizing Israel or Zionism. In fact, like, some institutions have reclassified anti-Semitism as being synonymous with criticizing Zionism. So it is actually within the pale. I see. This is what I'm glad we're doing this segment. I'm glad we're doing this segment because it is that's what makes this positioning from Jill Stein and her camp very effective, because they actually don't need to say and like be disingenuous about a lot of things. I think on some things they are, but they can actually just say and advocate for correct positions, because what is bad about what they're doing is functional. It is not rhetorical. Their rhetoric on these issues is overwhelmingly good. But the main criticism here is that while their rhetoric is good, their function within our current system is bad. Does that make sense? I'm trying to simplify it, but I think I put it in a concise way.
In 2020,
It makes their attractiveness to disillusioned voters much greater than it would be otherwise.
Joe Biden won those states with 65% of the Muslim vote. In January 2024, he was receiving 12% of the Muslim vote, which means, in point of fact, the Democrats have already lost this election.
Although that was Biden, he's no longer the candidate.
And so that number did not even get up to 20% with Kamala Harris. Only about 5% are going towards Trump, 80% are going third party. And the overwhelming majority of those that are going third party are coming to the Green Party. CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, recently released polling figures that showed nationwide we are polling neck and neck with Kamala Harris, which means that we are already doing massive damage in the Muslim population.
I looked at that CARE poll. It's not the most scientific of polls.
I didn't say it was a scientific poll. However,
and according to that CARE poll...
Okay, this guy knows that he's citing a not great poll that does make them look good, but is not good. It is a low quality poll. See, this is the first BS point we've heard so far, and I think this guy knows that he was stretching the truth a little bit. He's trying to get one past Mehdi, but Mehdi's too quick.
SPU ones, however,
Agreed.
are. Okay, good.
But the CARE poll, it's interesting you should mention it, since we're on it just briefly.
Sure, absolutely.
Jill Stein, you're tied at 29-29.
Yep.
But that same CARE poll showed you at 36 back in June, so you've actually dropped 7 points since Biden was swapped out for Harris.
Oof. Right, and that's not...
Harris is getting a boost.
That's not surprising. Yes, and of course she could, and she's been getting the benefit of the doubt, but I think her recent behavior is driving people away.
No argument for me.
Not great.
No argument for me on that.
And she's doing her best.
So let me ask you this, though.
All of her policy
The Green Party agenda, in my view, I'm not speaking for other people, is a pretty popular agenda. You look at the things you're advocating.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Americans want it.
Absolutely.
Which is why the Democrats are,
but my question is, and we've got a lot to talk about today. I do want to talk about the agenda. I want to talk more about Gaza, a lot of issues. But just at the beginning to establish, because you're the candidate, it's a popular agenda, but why are you the face of it? Why are you the candidate? Because you ran in 2012, you ran in 2016. I think you got 0.4% of the vote in 2012. You got 1.1% in 2016. We're living in a year where all the candidates are stepping aside for fresh blood. Why did you think I'm going to do this a third time in my 70s, having done it in 2012 and 2016?
Mainly, we had another candidate who is going to be our presidential candidate, Dr. Cornel West, who has very similar positions to us.
And then there was an awkward schism.
And very shortly before our paperwork was due, he decided he would prefer to run solo. For entirely understandable reasons. It's not easy to build a relationship with a political party, especially a party that doesn't come with a campaign in a box.
For understandable reasons? Nah, dog, that doesn't make sense.
And small,
So you stepped in because there was no one else?
Well, there was enormous pressure on me to step in because I was one of 2 people who could have basically built a campaign in the 3 weeks that we had. So,
fair answer.
Believe me,
I was wondering
if I did not volunteer for this position.
Fair enough.
I was not going to run for office.
Hold on. Let me pose a question.
Please
I'm going to
do,
bring you in because I've got a question for both of you that's relevant.
For a 74-year-old, she does have a lot of energy. I'll give her that.
Which is, there is also an experience issue to address here. Obvious experience issue.
Isn't the guy she mentioned a controversial political figure? I mean, kinda now. Like Cornel West was pretty well respected before this entire election cycle, where he announced he was running for president with one political party, and then realized it was deeply the people running that party were deeply problematic, so he jumped ship from that one and he ran with the Green Party, and then jumped ship from that one, and now he's running his own campaign. Like it's been a wild ride for Cornel West, and frankly, he serves the exact same function as Jill Stein in this race.
When Trump ran for president, a lot of people, myself included, said he did not.
And Cornel West is now peddling anti-vax conspiracism. So how the mighty have fallen.
have the experience.
Yes.
A reality TV star, a dodgy New York property developer, had no business being anywhere near the Oval Office. And he proved it in office. He was completely incompetent, reckless, put aside the ideology.
Oh, yes.
He wasn't just not qualified, he had no history of public service. You, Jill Stein, have only served in one elected role, I believe, on Lexington Town Council, which you won with 539 votes. Butch Ware, I think you mentioned already,
Hey, Real
you've
Red,
not
huh?
run for office before, you've not held any office before. So what makes...
Why did Cornel West step down? Because he's basically been wearing clown shoes for the last year. It's been really sad to see. I had a lot of respect for him.
The two of you qualified to run the world's most powerful country, the world's biggest economy, most advanced military?
Yeah, so let me just jump in.
Yeah.
So I served for 5 years on Lexington Town Meeting. But beyond that, I served in leadership positions, enacting campaign finance
No, I said clown shoes. Jesus, get the wax out of your ears.
reform and public financing in the state of Massachusetts, where we passed that as a referendum, had to build a strong coalition, had to, do all the public policy things in order to do that. I helped lead the effort to clean up our coal plants and to push for renewable energy in Massachusetts.
What, guys? Clan shoes isn't even a thing. I said clown! Clown shoes! Jesus!
Which are great efforts, but not qualifications to be commander-in-chief of the world's most powerful country.
Well, I don't know about that. I mean, because what's really important to have is not to have experience being bought off, and that alone, I think...
It's just not a phrase. One is a phrase, the other's not.
puts our campaign head and shoulders above our competitors here. We are not bought off.
Okay, go.
Might I be tagged in?
Please.
I'm looking forward to the day that they allow Dr. Jill Stein on stage with the other two candidates, and let's just flip the question with respect to qualifications. And Dr. Jill Stein.
No, it's fine, Alan Smith. It's fine. I'm glad you asked for clarification so that, like, I don't know, I don't get clipped and people are like, look at Jack calling Cornel West part of the Klan, because that's absolutely not what I said.
Can look towards Team Red and say this one is being led by a domestic terrorist who attempted to overthrow the United States government on January 6th. So who has the qualifications? The other one, Team Blue, is being led by a woman who has participated actively in what the International Criminal Court and International Court of Justice have defined as what? An illegal apartheid state? Committing an illegal genocide. Hold on.
I'm not disputing.
No, 1 second. I'm going to come back to qualifications.
Please.
Okay? It's not about policy. It's actually about qualifications.
It's about building.
Exactly.
It's about building coalitions that can work together and accomplish things.
An apartheid state, an illegal genocide, and an illegal occupation. So all of these things are to say is that there are moral and ethical qualifications for holding office as well. And as for me, as a 30-year-old assistant professor, I was managing $1.5 million in grants, operating international programs. There's no question that with an actual medical doctor and a PhD, that we have been at the top of our respective fields, that we are going to be the most qualified White House actually to serve in any recent memory.
You don't think you need to be a senator, a governor, served in the military, a government of 3 million people, deal with world leaders? You make it sound very simple. On that basis, couldn't anyone walking down the street in D.C. run for president? On the description that Butch just gave.
They could not. I mean, it's not a simple matter to run for president.
I'm glad we agree on that. Now we're in agreement.
We agree on that.
Okay.
And we are the only...
How did Cornel West decide to ruin his reputation? I mean, largely it seems to be that he had a large amount of debt and saw a political campaign as a way of maybe discharging some of that debt. But that's about as much as I can speculate.
Only people-powered political party that actually has nationwide ballot access, and we have maintained that actually for decades. So on so many fronts, we are qualified, and we are uniquely qualified. So absolutely, and further, we have supporters who have had that experience. So Jeffrey Sachs, for example, would be our Secretary of State, is a very strong supporter for the campaign. Michael Hudson, who has advised many governments around the world.
Although I do remember Trump saying, "I'll surround myself with great people too."
Leadership is the capacity to delegate responsibility, right? And to listen and to take counsel.
The thing is, these are not great answers from Jill Stein and co. Like, you need to have better answers than this. Like, the fact that this really does seem like the first time they're being asked about this, and It's embarrassing in a, I'm not there to cringe in person, but I'm cringing in my heart.
And
So
Jill is a leader.
let's talk about policy. Since you mentioned policy there, you mentioned the International Criminal Court. You say you're running to stop the genocide, right?
Oh, yeah.
Can you explain to me and to our viewers how voting for you both in November, given
Let's
you
go.
won't actually win the presidency, will
I'm sorry,
stop,
say what now?
given you won't actually win the presidency, will stop the genocide? How does
Yes.
a protest vote for the Greens, and I get the protest vote, I get a lot of people, I understand it, but how does it stop the genocide? Lay down the steps for me that stops the genocide.
Yeah, so
Lay it out.
what stops the genocide,
Yeah.
number one, if we turn the White House green, which would be a great thing,
Yep.
but
Okay, but that's not going to happen.
we would pick up the phone. I would pick up the phone on day one, and the
I have-
genocide.
But this is the thing, right? Like, yeah, but like this is like a child being like, well, if someone tried to kidnap me, I would simply call down an orbital laser strike and blow them up, but not me. I'd be safe from the laser with my laser shield. Like it is an act of fanciful imagination.
No
is
doubt about
over.
that.
So this is actually doable.
But you're not gonna be
Every-
president.
Well,
Says you.
well,
No,
let's-
says
let's-
the polls. You're at 2% in the polls. But
And because we cannot get on mainstream media, Mehdi, so you are
Let's-
part.
I'm
Yeah,
not-
but like it doesn't matter if you're saying, well, look, we're just not polling better because we can't get on mainstream media. Yeah, that's unfair. It is unfair that you can't get on mainstream media. It is like the entire system is not conducive to third parties. It's very unfair in that regard. But you have to contend with that. Okay, so it's unfair. Now what? And the issue is that what Mehdi's trying to ask here is, okay, but you're not going to win though. Like realistically, a 2% polling like stance is not going to become a winning coalition in the time between now and the election day.
I'm not saying why.
Exactly.
Well,
I'm
yeah.
not saying why you're at 2%.
This
There's
is
many
an
reasons why you're at 2%. I'm just saying you're not going to be president
This
on
is a
November the
black
5th.
swan
In your
election.
view.
Let's
No,
not-
in your view
let's
too.
not-
No.
You, but
Well,
you, hold
can
on.
I suggest-
She's Jewish. That Laserbit could be taken weirdly. Oh, come off. Okay, you're a child that's like, what if suddenly a giant elephant falls from the sky and my attacker goes up its ass? There, we nailed it. But I have my anti-elephant ass shield. There, I fixed it.
Just we table that discussion
Go ahead,
because
Dr.
we're
Jill.
not going to come to the end of that.
Well, let's park that and say, how do we
yes.
stop the genocide then?
Yes,
If you're not gonna be-
let's focus on that because every vote that's
Excuse me as an elephant. Fuck you guys.
cast for Kamala Harris or for Donald Trump is an endorsement of genocide. It is an affirmation of genocide. It says
I'm really mad at Marjorie Taylor Greene from taking space lasers
Jill
from
Stein
us.
and whoever the hell this other guy is doing a cope stream with Mehdi Hasan.
Oh, that's his. That's her running mate. That's her vice president pick. Also, thank you for the $10 super chat. I appreciate it. Yeah, fuck all you guys. I'm not making a reference to Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm making a reference to Gears of War, the hit video game series. Many of you haven't called in a strike from the Hammer of Dawn, and it shows.
that you, the voter,
Yeah.
says that this is okay. You
Got
are
it.
holding your nose and voting for genocide.
Understood.
On
I
the
understand
other
that
hand,
argument.
Every vote for our campaign is a shot across the bow of the empire
So
to
it's
say,
about feeling good. It's not about actually changing
It's about
things.
well, no, it
consolidating.
is.
See, this is the no, but that's the thing, right? Like she's talking about, wouldn't it feel nice to give a finger to the empire, to shoot a shot across their bow? Like that's the value proposal there. It's not about actually doing anything. It's just about feeling good. It's about finding catharsis for your rage. And while I understand that impulse, we're in an election where it's way too important to throw your vote away because you want to feel good.
Power.
is-
What you just described as a feeling, right?
No, I said it is a
asked
shot.
for
Well,
a
let me
plan.
finish. Let me finish.
Let me finish my question, then you can answer. Let me repeat the question. Lay out for me the steps whereby I go
Yes.
into a voting booth, vote green,
Okay.
and the genocide stops.
Let me put
I don't
it
see
very
that happening.
clearly.
Yeah.
So whether we
Yep.
get 2%, 5%,
Okay.
15%,
Uh-huh.
we are creating a very organized coalition that is here for the long haul,
That's right.
for a political vehicle to stop genocide and the imperial policies.
What political coalition is going to be effective if Donald Trump is in office, the guy who said he's going to be a dictator on day one? What kind of activist coalition is going to be able to survive the guy who was almost able to have protesters shot by the U.S. Army, and instead made do with using his control over the border patrol agencies and ICE in particular to black bag protesters? Like that's what he did. He already was able to black bag protesters using ICE. What do you think he's going to do when he's surrounded by yes men who are just going to deploy the army? Do you think it's going to go better? Do you like we already live in a time where state officials in Republican states are raiding activist households and like confiscating equipment and ruining lives, holding people in prison and jails. Like, that's not going to improve under Donald Trump. Media Breakdown, thank you for the $5 super chat. I would love to have an actual legit third party, but it feels like it only pops up every 2 to 4 years. That engagement needs grinded out. Well, that's the thing, Media Breakdown. I would also love a third party. I don't like the two-party duopoly we live in, but we need ranked choice voting in order to actually get third parties that are possible. Like, the math just doesn't math when it comes to elections unless we have ranked choice voting. And the only exception to that, there's only one exception, okay, for us to get third parties, and that is a complete and utter collapse of one of the parties. That's it. That's it. We might be, if Donald Trump loses this election, we might be going in that direction for the Republican Party, but the Democrats aren't falling apart right now. Why doesn't Jill push for ranked choice voting? You know, Story of the Bard, I understand the question. If you asked her that, she would say that she does, and that it's part of the Green Party platform, because it is. However, when you actually look at what the Green Party does, there's not all that much emphasis on ranked choice voting and organizing on local levels for it. My thought would be that if you genuinely were an organization that wanted to move in a constructive direction and wanted to actually get this possible, you would throw all of your efforts into third-party organizing for ranked choice on a state-by-state level. That's how you could build up your ground game. It would, I think that would be incredibly effective, and I would love it if the Green Party did that, but they don't, you know? Again, you have to look past the rhetoric that they're using and look at the function. Kind of like how when Republicans say, "Oh, how do you know I'm racist? You don't know what's in my heart." And it's like, well, you have to look past, you know, the rhetoric of that they employed to deny their racism and look at what they actually do, which is the racism. You know, like, you need to be able to do that also with people who tell you things that you want to hear.
That go with it. So every vote that one casts is huge, and every time one even registers in the polls on behalf of our campaign is another warning shot.
I
so
understand
what is the what?
Agreed.
So where does that go?
Yep.
Where that goes is directly to the White House and to Congress to say that, you know, we not only have public opinions polls to show that this is the very firm commitment of the American people.
So
right
it's a pressure campaign.
It
it's to send a message.
Pressure. Well, it's
send
not,
a message to who, though?
See, this is the thing, right? Like, she's saying it's a message campaign, but also to hypothetically, maybe someday, send this message, because the message isn't going to be received until years down the road, until some ill-defined time in the future.
To the power holders who
Who will be the power holder?
So whoever they are. And right now, they are, both Democrats and Republicans, are ignoring the American people.
That's
68%.
Right. So I just want to be clear, if you get 15, 20%, let's say you get Ross Perot numbers, it would be huge.
Absolutely huge.
And there's no sign you're going to do that, but let's say you did, You think that would then on
And
November
let me
the
just say,
5th...
Mehdi, don't close it down before it happens.
Well,
Exactly.
we're less than 60 days.
Who would have thought Joe Biden
Dr.
was going
Stein,
to be replaced
if this
by
was
Kamala
6 months
Harris?
ago, I'll give you a chance. In
Joe,
less than
may-
60 days. Let me just finish my point, and I'll come to you, Rich. The point you're making, I get it. You get to 15, 20%, that would be huge. It would be Ross Perot
huge.
territory if you got there.
And we are not going
But,
away.
but
That's right.
November the 6th, you're saying whoever the president-elect is, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris, would look at that number and say, I need to change course,
well,
even though they've
even
just
before
won.
that,
Like, again, you can tell where Mehdi Hasan's heading with this, and that is very specifically that if Donald Trump is in office and he gets like a letter from activists showing that they were able to pull 20% of the support away from like Kamala Harris, he's just going to be like, huh, that's interesting. We'll have to rig the election 20 points in my favor next time. He's literally pledged to be a dictator. Why are you expecting fair elections after this? Why on earth would you expect any kind of reaction from the powers that be if Donald Trump becomes president and effectively a dictator? Why would you expect that? Why would he listen to you? He can just send, like, the army to your home and kill you if he wanted to. And I know that sounds like crazy, out of left field. I know that sounds like, oh, you're just making up a scenario, but literally, that's what we've seen in other countries that have followed the path that Donald Trump is following right now. You know, we've seen activists imprisoned or intimidated out of the country into fleeing, and when I say this, I'm referring very specifically to Hungary. We know that Donald Trump has very close ties with Viktor Orban from Hungary. Viktor Orban has spoken at CPAC numerous times. He is embedded into the Republican Party. And Donald Trump is following Viktor Orban's path in an American context. That is what is happening with Donald Trump. And if you expect fair elections, you shouldn't if Donald Trump wins.
We don't have to get
we
to
don't
election
have to
day
wait
for that.
till
Okay,
election
I'm
day.
glad
Yeah, honestly, Mask of Anarchy, like, I don't know why anyone would expect due process if Donald Trump is in office either.
Made that point. So let me
Yes.
bring you in, Butch. Noura Erakat.
Yes.
You know
Yes,
Noura
of
Erakat.
course, yeah.
Palestinian-American activist, academic. I believe she was considered to be your running mate before you offered the slot to Butch. She says she turned you down because she wants to pressure the Democrats,
Yes.
specifically the Democrats, into the current people in power, into changing course on Gaza. But you refused to agree to step aside if Harris did the right thing on a ceasefire or an arms embargo. Doesn't that suggest that your party's priority is not stopping the genocide? It is being in the race as a spoiler no matter what happens in
No,
Gaza.
absolutely not. And the reason
That's
for
what
that...
Noura's tweet suggests.
I was completely unaware of that. Again, this is another indication that, like, whatever is happening within the Green Party is incredibly messy. Like, that's the person assumed to have been Jill Stein's running mate prior to her announcing this guy, saying that essentially Jill Stein is a grifting loser who is doing this not, in fact, for the benefit of the people of Palestine, but for a secret third reason. And I find that fascinating.
Yes, well, Noura is new to the political process. Bless her heart for even considering.
Oh, she just said, fuck that lady. She just said, fuck that bitch. Okay. All right. That's the plot thickens.
You know, doing this absolutely insane way of life. But she is new to this.
For those of you who don't have context, if you say bless your heart to someone, that's actually like fighting words in America.
Process. And one thing you learn is that if you lose your ballot status, you're not getting it back, especially nowadays when it's way more costly. It's absolutely prohibitive. So if as a grassroots, people-powered campaign, you give up your ballot status, you're done. So what we know is that simply getting a ceasefire is not It's not over and done. We still have an occupation. We still have an apartheid state.
Okay, but you're not
we
going
still
to
have
end the
ethnic cleansing.
occupation between now and November the 5th.
Yes, but that's exactly the point, is that we have to be here for the long haul. We are not just till November 6th.
So talk me through, you're saying Noura doesn't understand politics. Noura's logic seems to be pretty simple. If you go to the Democrats and say, hey, we've got all this support,
and
if you don't give an arms embargo, and the Democrats say, all right, we give you, they won't, but let's say we give you an arms embargo, and then you carry on running.
Well, and then they change their mind.
But they could say the same to you.
Well,
you're still
what we
running
can say to them right now is that if you agree to that arms embargo, you are winning back a lot of votes.
You're winning.
So
Whose
you don't
votes?
need
Your votes?
the votes that are coming to us. You're going to win them
votes of
back.
the American people.
So you'll say that publicly. Let me just finish. Wait.
Yeah.
You'll say that publicly.
Oh, we already have.
I just want to be clear, because it's not clear to me.
Yeah.
If tomorrow Kamala Harris comes out and says, as president, I will bring in an arms embargo on Israel.
Not saying she will.
How does she do it? She's not the president.
Well,
Hold on,
she
she's
is
not
the
the
vice
president. But we know that she doesn't control Joe Biden.
Well, but she has a lot of say in this.
So now the goalpost.
I'm sorry, but if you think Kamala Harris could walk up to Joe Biden and say, we need a ceasefire and an arms embargo now, Joe Biden would literally look at her and be like, what? Yes, $100 trillion more for Israel, and then fall back asleep.
Seem to be moving now. If the presidential candidate says, as uncommitted movement want her to say, I support an arms embargo on Israel.
And by the way, there would be nothing that Kamala Harris could do about it because she's the vice president and has no actual power in the White House outside of being a figurehead.
You will say, I'm just trying to get to the end of this process. You will say, I, Jill Stein, say you will get some of my supporters on November the 5th.
Well, I mean, clearly she will.
But you won't say it.
She would.
Well, no, I have already acknowledged that a lot of support is coming to us because of Kamala Harris's refusal to consider an arms embargo.
So it's actually relatively simple and straightforward, okay? Imagine being in a position where all you have to do in order to win an election is to stop committing the most heinous... Hold on, let me finish, Mehdi. Stop committing the most heinous genocide in recent memory. A decimation, literally 1/10 of the population murdered in 11 months. And all you have to do in order to meet the American people is to stop that genocide. This question, in point of fact, is not for us. This question is for Kamala Harris. How deeply does your soul have to be folded in the pockets of AIPAC and the war machine that you are willing to lose this election because they have already lost this election if they continue with this stance.
I do a lot of these interviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I tell people this. I'm going to tell you what I tell everyone else.
Say it.
I've had Democrats on my show sitting right where you sat. I've asked them these questions.
Yes.
This is not about the Democrats. I'm asking the Green Party strategy.
Fair point.
So I'm saying if the Green Party say we're going to stop the genocide when you vote for us, we're entitled to say, how does voting for you stop the genocide?
Okay.
It's it is incredible that he has had to ask this 5 times now, and they haven't been able to articulate it. This should be a question that they all saw coming from a mile away and prepped ahead of time. They should have memorized an entire 5-page research paper on how to answer this specific question, knowing that they were going on Mehdi's show, knowing that they're going into an election season where it's actually really important to have this answer. And instead, what they have is what they have is virtue signaling. That's what they have. What they have is saying the right words without any actual intent to follow through, or any ability to follow through, or really any expectation of following through, because ultimately, at the end of the day, their value proposition to voters is, we'll help you feel good about this for a little bit. That's it. They'll be like a soothing salve on your heart for a little while to make you feel better about how, hey, you're in America and you are also part of this system that is enabling the genocide. And unfortunately, throwing away your vote on Jill Stein is not actually going to end that genocide. It's not actually going to hold any of the people accountable. And in fact, it will worsen our position. So in that respect, in either bringing an end to the genocide or, an end to the apartheid state, or getting aid in to the people who are currently suffering right now. Foxbat, thank you. Yes, that is honestly a really good analogy. They are selling the leftists of America an indulgence. They are out there trying to tell you this will soothe your soul so that you can feel better about yourself as you look at the news stories and the horrors unfolding elsewhere in the world. Like, if you're going to engage in electoral politics, you have to engage in electoral politics. And electoral politics is always, always, always triage. It is choosing your adversaries. It is choosing who you would rather fight against. And frankly, I think we have a lot less far to push a Kamala Harris administration than we do compared to a Trump administration. We have more ability, more leverage on Kamala Harris than we do on Donald Trump. That's just, at the end of the day, that's just facts.
And might I just expand on this
Please.
particular point?
Briefly.
The Green Party does not exist simply to stop the genocide in Gaza.
Okay, fair enough.
The Green Party exists in order.
See, but the question was, how does voting for the Green Party stop the genocide in Gaza? And your response is the Green Party doesn't exist just to stop the genocide in Gaza, which doesn't sound like an answer to the question unless you're just saying that voting for the Green Party isn't going to stop the genocide, which, yeah, we know that already. Well, we here know that, but unfortunately other leftists don't know that.
To restore democracy to the American people, in order to provide a voice for all of the people who are not interested in the culture wars between red and blue. It is there to do long-term things like establish ranked choice voting,
Agreed.
to abolish the electoral college, to run on reparations,
Yep.
land
And we'll
back,
come back to your
social
policy agenda,
housing.
I promise.
So, but that's my point, is that
Well, I'm
you
glad you said that.
do not just throw away 40 years of building a party because Nora Arakat wants you to.
I just wanted to be clear as to what the goal was. You're making it very clear that even you are about more than the genocide. I just wanted to make that clear.
And to her benefit, you know.
But maybe you should answer the question, though, because I'm still very curious, because you haven't answered, how does voting for the Green Party end the genocide? Because you're not going to win, so what does it functionally do? That is the question he's asking.
You know, what she suggested is not, some kind of crazy, outlandish
I mean, you
idea.
can understand,
It's a very
you can understand as a
reasonable
Democrat.
suggestion.
You can understand as a Democrat if you're pushing your party. There are a lot of good Democrats trying to push their party towards the arms embargo.
Towards something
and then the
reasonable.
Greens say, well, we're running anyways, and we're still going to screw you over. Democrats might think, well, you don't really.
we screwing them over?
Not screwing
Well,
people over. We are
I'm so glad you said that, because that's brought me
and
to my
people's
next question,
expressed
so we can move on to that
desire.
subject.
Yes.
Democrats
Let's go.
think you are.
Come on.
Democrats think.
I honestly wish that he wouldn't move on to a new subject, because I genuinely want them to answer. I want them to provide, like, the intellectual framework they use to, like, justify their running. You know, like, what are they meaningfully accomplishing by siphoning votes away from, like, this duopolistic system when there are no other real alternatives here?
Think you are screwing them over.
Well, of course they are,
And let me
because they are screwing themselves.
Yeah, let me hold on.
need
Let me
to
ask the
blame it on
question, and then you can
someone.
answer.
Are you
In
serious,
2016, in 2016, you know the number of votes you got in the three crucial swing states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin exceeded Donald Trump's margin of victory over Hillary Clinton, each of those three states. You and I spoke before that election, where I said, hey, you might actually swing some of these states. Do you want to tell people to vote Hillary in swing states? You said, absolutely not. We talked about it on Al Jazeera at the time.
And I'm really curious. I hope Mehdi does revisit this, because I'm wondering. I'm wondering, what did she get out of the last election cycle? What did they achieve with that strategy?
I know you point out that a lot of those voters would have stayed at home,
Exactly.
so they wouldn't have swung it.
According to exit polls, we know that.
But they
This
would have
isn't
stayed at
conjecture.
home unless you had told them to vote for Hillary Clinton,
No,
which you
they
refused
would-
to do.
they would not.
They don't respect
They
you.
would not.
Okay.
Genuinely, it is interesting to see this play out, because there is a certain argument to be made here that, like, if Jill Stein had directed voters towards Hillary, that she would have won. the margins were very small. And like, she might be right that a lot of them wouldn't have voted for Hillary, but I guarantee you some of them would. It's not a 100% proposition.
They
Talking
don't-
about-
So
they don't-
voting for a
our
corporate
voters
fund.
do
let me
not
ask you-
take marching
Okay, so
orders
fine,
from
forget
political
2016.
bosses.
We're not voting for a corporate
Democrats
fund.
We'll
do
have to
that.
agree to disagree
Please
what
do
would have
not.
happened in 2016. But in 2024, I wonder, or in 2017-18, when you told me at the time, there's no difference, there's not enough difference between Clinton and Trump, is what you told me
Well,
at
what
the
I
time.
said is that they're not different enough
Not different
to save
enough.
your job, to save
And
your
you
life,
said they're
to
both
save the
evils.
planet.
You said they're
That's
both
still
evils,
true.
just as you said about Harris and Trump. I'm just wondering, was during that disastrous Trump presidency, when kids were being kidnapped from their parents at the border,
is he
when people were
giggling?
dying en masse from COVID, when he was praising Nazis, doing domestic terrorism, as Butch says, did you ever at any point say, maybe I got that one wrong?
Oh, no. It's just that we needed to have given the American people a greater choice here. And
But what did you accomplish? If the choice they were given was effectively meaningless, then was it a choice? Like, there's a way to answer this question for Jill Stein in a way that doesn't make her look like an asshole. But like, when the margins were that small and she had a bunch of voters turning out in those swing states to vote for her, like, and effectively throwing their vote away and potentially causing the rise of Donald Trump. Like, I know people who lost their entire livelihoods because of Donald Trump. I know people who had their health care stopped because of Donald Trump. I know people who meaningfully suffered because of Donald Trump. And to hear her say, like, oh no, like, the American people needed a choice. Again, like, it's not a real choice.
and we need to have been heard. We're not going to remember, Trump voters are basically people who are voting against Democrats, against Hillary Clinton, against Joe Biden. That's where that came from. It also came from the Pied Piper strategy, whereby the Democrats lifted up the most extreme Republican, and they
I'm
do
not
that
defending
over
the
and over.
Democrats. I'm asking you.
The last thing
do you ever go, you know what?
No,
Judging how
and
bad
I'll
Trump
tell you
was,
why.
when people were piling up in morgues in New York,
Because
when he was
Democrats-
telling people to put bleach in your arms,
Yeah.
did you ever think, actually, Hillary would have done COVID better? We all knew she would have.
Hillary
Yeah.
could have started World War III.
But we're talking about what happened.
Yeah, totally.
Hillary could have started World War III. Over 1 million Americans died from COVID. There are tens of thousands now living with long COVID. Like, their response is that, well, hypothetically, I can imagine a scenario in which Hillary Clinton, cast meteor and destroyed the planet. It's like, did you play too much Final Fantasy? Like, is Hillary Clinton literally Sephiroth? Like, what are you doing here?
Do you ever think, maybe I got that one wrong?
No,
No,
not at
you had
all.
no regrets during the
because
Trump
I'm
presidency.
absolutely convinced that Democrats are not the solution to right-wing extremism. In many ways, they are the cause of it through austerity, through privatization, through big...
Yeah, just as a quick aside, the only reason Donald Trump didn't wind up nuking Iran or North Korea was because his military leaders stopped him. And just as an FYI here, just throwing this out, this is 3 hours ago. Trump's top general calls former president a fascist and dangerous threat. Retired U.S. Army General Mark Milley said former President Trump is a fascist to the core, according to journalist Bob Woodward's forthcoming book, War. Milley expressed scorn for the GOP presidential nominee has escalated. He is now the most dangerous person to this country, he told Woodward. I had suspicions when I talked to you about his mental health decline and so forth, but now I realize he's a total fascist. A never sent draft resignation letter by Milley and said Trump was doing great and irreparable harm to the U.S. So I just want you all to know that this is not like a liberal guy. He's a general in the U.S. military, or was a general in the U.S. military. He was the highest echelon of the military, and he was the guy who stopped Trump's craziest plans. He's not there anymore. And now the Supreme Court has given the president total and supreme power. So, you don't have the guy who is stopping him from doing all the crazy fascist things that he wanted with the military. And you want to run the risk, you want to roll the dice of putting him back into office. Because you think maybe somehow a fascist being in charge of the US military, in charge of the strongest country on earth, in charge of the country with the largest nuclear weapon stockpile on the planet, you think that's going to end well for other nations or marginalized communities in other nations? It's not. It's not. This is like thinking Hitler was going to be, appeased. Eddie writes, coming in to say I was an essential worker during 2020. I got COVID 3 times, was spit on, coughed on, and had my mask ripped off. I caught COVID 3 times. I can't remember half the stuff. I get winded just... Can't remember half the stuff. I get winded just going up a flight of stairs. F. Jill Stein here. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that, Eddie. But they're playing cute about potentially getting someone that the highest leaders of our military call the gravest threat to our country. And frankly, if it's the gravest threat to our country, that is a threat to the entire planet, because I can think of nothing nothing more terrifying, rather, than a madman being in control of our nuclear arsenal and our military capabilities.
But in the moment, 2017 to 2021, as the people are dying, as the Nazis are marching, you're not thinking, it was wrong of me to say they're the same.
None of these things exist in isolation. We have several converging crises right now.
So here's the problem. Back in June, this is what we're doing this all again. The same arguments are being made, as you know.
Hey, Morbius
It's not just
Dragon.
Democrats saying you're helping Donald Trump. Donald Trump is saying, he said at a rally, Jill Stein, I like her very much. You know why? She takes 100% from them. Donald Trump seems to like your candidacy. Steve Bannon has said the same thing. Why are Republicans saying this if you're not helping?
I think they have the same, what shall we say, extremely enlightened and visionary understanding of politics. No, I don't look to them for political analysis. No.
You're not looking to them for political analysis, but they're also not lying. They love you. Like, they love your political movement because you are a spoiler candidate, and they recognize that because it helps them, and they like that. It's very simple. Like, it's not cute that Steve Bannon, the strategist that got Donald Trump into the White House, who's currently serving prison time for trying to protect him, it's not cute that he loves you. It's not cute that a fascist who wants to kill as many Palestinians as he possibly can loves you. Also, Morbius Dragon, thank you for gifting a membership over on YouTube. I appreciate it.
No, I don't think...
analysis, they're working on your behalf. According to the AP, let me put this to you.
Sure.
According to the Associated Press, just last week, Jefferson Thomas, a longtime Republican Party operative from Colorado, submitted petition signatures that his GOP law firm...
Like honestly, as a leftist who is fully aware of who Steve Bannon is, if I ever heard that Steve Bannon was a huge fan of my advocacy, I would yeet myself out a window immediately.
...on behalf of your campaign in New Hampshire, Republicans are cynically working to get you on the ballot because they think you're going to help them.
Of course. And this enemy of my enemy is my friend logic is exactly the thing that the Democrats utilize. That
I didn't quote Democrats. These are Republicans, Mitch.
But are you listening to my point? So what I'm saying is that the Republicans are thinking exactly the same way. We're not operating according to the same logic. We believe that we will draw many of those Bernie Trump voters. We believe that with an actual working class agenda that meets the needs of the American people, we will bring new voters into the process. We believe that
This is one of the dumbest strategies I've ever heard articulated in all of politics. Banking on the Bernie to Trump voter demographic? Are you kidding me? The vast majority of people in the country don't vote. They're the people you should work on. This is like unironically. I know some people have like talked about a red-brown alliance. It literally feels like that. This feels like completely politically naive moment for these people, where they're just cozying up to a fascist movement and trying to deny it at the same time. It is actually awe-inspiring.
by using data analysis carefully and reaching out to this young generation that is on fire about Gaza, that we will enroll a lot of new voters in the 18 to 29 demographic. What those right-wing thugs do is their business. It has no purchase over our game plan.
Stop putting in petitions on our behalf.
Absolutely. We don't need y'all's help. We
By the
don't
way,
want
you
y'all's
mentioned
help.
Bernie. Bernie, of course, is also...
We don't need y'all's help. We don't want y'all's help. Really? Because you only have 150-some elected officials across the entirety of the U.S. and have been diminishing in political power. By the way, that 150 political officials, that includes, like, town-level politicians. Not, like, we're not talking state-level positions. I think currently there might be one state-level elected official. Like, it is actually shocking how weak their movement is, and they know that. They know how weak their movement is, and to like brag about not needing any help when you are literally weaker now than you were 10 years ago. They are gone, man.
Also worried that you are going to cost the Democrats or help Trump win.
If Bernie
Forget the
had
Democrats.
run as a Green, he'd probably be president.
So let me ask you this: it's not just Democrats.
How? Articulate how. How can you say something like that with such confidence when there's literally no data to back that up? Not a single ounce of data. Oh yeah, if Bernie Sanders just ran the Green Party, he'd be president. This is literally like, I don't know, people, they're doing political astrology and just trying to will things into being. If we just think hard enough, if we think happy thoughts hard enough, we'll be president one day.
Saying that you're helping the Republicans. It's not just Republicans saying you're helping the Republicans. You yourself seem to endorse that message, Jill Stein, over the weekend. You liked a comment on Instagram which said, and I quote, "The Dems need to be stopped. Either vote for Trump, or if you can't, then vote Green." You're endorsing the acceptability of voting for a fascist.
I don't know who...
I mean, honestly, Voss, if the Greens were serious, they'd be targeting state-level seats. You know, state-level, positions, because they need to build up state-level power in order to get ranked choice voting so that their party is even viable on a national level. Like, they can't... It is honestly shocking to me how inept this interview is, and I had very low expectations going into it.
liked that comment.
It's your personal page, Dr. Jill Stein,
yeah,
Instagram
well,
page.
It certainly wasn't done by me, so
Okay.
I don't know if
you
some
might want to
staff...
monitor that, because you're a presidential candidate and you're endorsing a guy. He didn't say vote Green. He said vote for Trump, and if you can't, then vote Green, and you like that comment.
Well, that's crazy. Yeah, no, I would never agree with that.
Let's just listen to that again.
The Dems need to be stopped, Jill Stein, over the weekend. You liked a comment on Instagram which said, and I quote, "The Dems need to be stopped. Either vote for Trump, or if you can't, then vote Green." You're endorsing the acceptability of voting for a fascist.
I don't know who liked that comment.
It's your personal page, Dr. Jill Stein, Instagram.
Well...
Oops.
it certainly wasn't done by me. So I don't know if
You
some
might want to
staff...
monitor that because
Yeah.
you're a presidential candidate and you're endorsing a guy. He didn't say vote green. He said vote for Trump. And if you can't, then vote green. And you like that
Well,
comment.
that's crazy. Yeah, no, I would never agree with that.
Okay, well,
Not
I
at
hope,
all.
I hope we can fix that. That's from your Instagram over the weekend.
And let me say, the dirty tricks being played here by the Republicans are small change compared to the dirty tricks here being played by Democrats.
And I'm not here to defend anyone's dirty tricks. I'm just asking questions. And actually,
You know, like, even in this comment, she's carrying water for the Republican Party. The Republican Party right now is like rat fucking in every possible way the election process. Like, we literally just heard a clip yesterday from Roger Stone talking about how they're going to remove over 1 million people from voter rolls in Florida and several other states where the election is likely to get close. Like, come on now.
you talk about Democrats. At a press conference in Chicago you did last month.
Yeah, she just implied that Democrats were hacking her Instagram account.
There were a bunch of people standing around you holding "Abandon Harris" signs.
Yeah.
Right? You're a third party. You want you're against both main parties, right? One of the criticisms from the Democrats is you're only ever anti-them, not the Republicans. Where were the signs saying "Abandon Trump"? I didn't see any in that.
Well, that wasn't under discussion at the moment, but absolutely we are very much on record against Trump.
Yeah.
But it's the Democrats who are forever being held up as a yardstick to measure us against. So that's where a lot of clarity needs to be lent.
But you would understand the perception. Look, if you're just surrounded by people saying "Abandon Harris," it looks like you're just running an anti-Democratic campaign, not anti-Republican.
Well, you know, people can make of it what they will, but we are
I mean, that rhetoric has been present in this very interview, so.
very clear. You know, our overarching comment on this is that the Democrats give lip service to the right things, whereas the Republicans don't even try. They don't even pretend.
If I might bring Malcolm into the conversation, and this was where we started a conversation on an Instagram Live that ended up with this candidacy coming together, right? This shared inheritance from Malcolm X. Malcolm called the liberals foxes and the conservative wolves. The liberals bare their teeth, and you think that they're smiling at you, but they're there to eat you. You're on the menu. The wolf bares its teeth and you know its intent. That is the, if I can say, the official position of this campaign with respect to teams red and team blue. So one is an open enemy, one is a concealed enemy.
So I got.
Yeah, and you want to deliver the country to the wolf? That doesn't seem like a good plan? Like, even if we accept your analogy here, you want to deliver us into the jaws of the wolf. That seems bad.
Let's drill down. I'm glad you brought that up. Do you believe?
Give it to the furries.
Before I get to that question,
Oh,
if
no.
Trump wins in November,
Yes.
are you fine with that?
Am I fine with that?
Yeah.
No thinking person would be fine with the idea
Then you need to analyze your function in this election, buddy.
of a completely incompetent, amoral, foolish, right? This is a man who could not pass any of my university classes under any circumstances, right?
So
nobody's fine with that.
So are you as fine with that as you are as fine with Harris winning?
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
They're equally bad.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely, and I'm going to tell you why.
Okay,
I'm going to
please.
tell you why,
Yeah.
because this is what I wanted to say in response to the question that you were posing earlier. Everybody is fear-mongering around a Trump presidency. I'm sorry, they were Democrats that were sending cops to campuses to beat up kids on my campus, okay? Coming in riot gear to remove people from encampments.
Yeah.
These were Democratic cities, Democratic establishments that are keeping the cops back and allowing modern-day Irgun thugs to beat up kids on UCLA campus.
And
these are Democrats that are building cop cities. Please,
But you don't think it can get worse?
Let me tag you in.
You don't think it can get worse? No, let's just
Go,
finish.
no,
I want to
I'm
finish with Butch because you made the point. You don't think it can get worse? You don't think Project 2025? You don't think putting the military on the streets, the Insurrection Act?
let me be clear.
That is
it
happening.
domestic.
Mehdi's spitting here. Thank God. Thank God someone can do actual follow-ups.
Right now.
Terrorist earlier, not
It
me.
can be-
Is
it
Kamala
can-
Harris a domestic terrorist?
She's an international war criminal.
But is she a domestic terrorist? Because you're saying that. So I'm just.
It's an interesting semantic question. Let me put it this way.
Wait, a genuine question here. How is Kamala Harris an international war criminal, what power is she able to exert? Like, maybe you could argue that she's complicit with war crimes, but she has no ability to order anyone to do war crimes. So you can argue she's complicit, but to say she is actively the one doing it, I think misunderstands her position and her function in the government. She personally fires every bullet and shell. Yeah.
Okay, let's not do semantics.
May I answer the question? So what I said in a social media post some time back was that whether you vote Team Red or Team Blue, militarized fascism wins. And the reason is that both are operated by the 1%. They share 95%.
This is a really stupid point. Specifically because there's a, with all due respect, the American empire is completely and utterly immoral, right? It is destructive. We wield an obscene amount of power. We are willing to throw it around. We are willing to prop up dictators and horrific leadership that commits atrocities across the planet. Okay, that's just facts. But there's a big difference between that machinery and that mechanism being operated by a neoliberal or a liberal or a fascist. There are big differences here. There's actual consequences to someone of a different ideological backing being in charge of that machinery of empire. Okay? Like, how to put this into perspective. Okay, I studied a lot of medieval history. Okay, I minored in medieval history. And one of the aspects that becomes very clear as you look at medieval leaders, especially in Europe, is that there's a big difference between a more liberal or reform-minded monarch versus an authoritarian monarch. Okay, and the amount of power wielded by an authoritarian monarch versus a reform-minded monarch, the amount of power might be the same, but the way that power is used is vastly different. Okay, you had people who led their nations into Renaissance, literally. Okay. Or you had leaders that ran their entire nation into the ground because they didn't understand aspects of monetary policy. Because they're the absolute ruler, they were able to just do their bad ideas. They were able to immiserate their entire country as a result of their decision-making and a result of their ideological predilections. So when we're looking at leadership, especially leadership in our current context, as consolidated as the presidency is, it really matters the ideology behind the machinery of our empire. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? The ideology of the leadership matters. And on one side, we have an out-and-out fascist, and on the other side, we have effectively, a soft neoliberal, or maybe even a liberal. Okay? The machinery of empire might be exactly the same between those two, but how that would be utilized is completely different. And I think that one of those people has an ideology that is much closer to ours, that we can actually influence and potentially begin the process of, reducing our empire or, putting pressure on parts of the imperial, outskirts to put an end to this genocide, to put an end to the insane, rabid state of Israel. Or at least the end of the protections, rather. I don't seek the end of Israel per se, but the end of their military actions, absolutely. Some of my friends say we have two fascists. I mean, like, I don't think those people know what fascism means. Like, with all due respect, you know, I think more people who are saying both sides are fascist need to read Umberto Eco's 14 Points or the longer Fascism essay. It's like 10 pages. It's like you can read it in like an hour, okay? Umberto Eco's Fascism is a very succinct explainer for what fascism actually is. Fascism is not a stand-in for empire. Fascism is not a stand-in for, for bad things. It's not a stand-in for military conflict. It has a very specific ideological meaning. And it is frustrating that people just don't seem to get it. Yeah, exactly, Quiet Kitsune. The machinery probably won't be dismantled overnight. And we need to do whatever we can now to get us closer to that point where we can start dismantling that machinery. You know? You have to take a step in the right direction now so you can continue taking steps in the right direction later. It's really not that complicated, in my mind. And again, if you're like, well, but I don't know where to get the essay, Googling fascism. Look at that. Look at that. The Anarchist Library, top result, has the essay fascism. Look at this. The entirety of it is done right here. Look at that. The 14 points listed out. Ends with a poem. And I think this final sentence here, freedom and liberation are an unending task. And I do not think that the solution to freedom and to achieving freedom and liberation is to deliver the country into the hands of a fascist. So anyway, I'm going to drop this link in chat. Here you go. It is quite literally one of the easiest reads of your life. It'll help clarify it at least a little bit. There are also some really good books about fascism out there that have been published more recently, but do yourself a favor and at least have a working basis of what fascism is from that essay.
Of the same patronage networks. They are owned by AIPAC and the War Machine. There is a faction fight amongst the 1% with Christian right-wing evangelicals and a diversity agenda on the other side, and that is driving this combat.
But the faction fight is pretty existential because it affects the future of our country.
The faction fight is existential for people.
Oh no, American empire is huge. We wield an enormous amount of power.
Like you, who cannot imagine a green future and can only imagine...
Yeah, like making DC a state or Puerto Rico a state, that's not what empire is.
This war between teams red and blue. As for us, we're not interested in the purple fascists. For us, they're very similar.
I guess the problem is
Jill,
it's great rhetoric, but in practice,
it's not.
It is rhetoric. Let me give you specifics, and you come back in. When you say they're both greater evils, they're both equally bad. This is what bothers me. On Gaza, maybe you're right, but on a whole host of other important issues, Trump is undeniably, demonstrably much worse than Harris. Let me just give you some examples. If Trump is elected, over 10 million undocumented immigrants are going to be targeted in a bloody, you say fearmonger, his words, this weekend, in a bloody military operation. If Trump is elected,
Trump literally gave a speech like a week or two ago calling for effectively an American Kristallnacht against immigrants. So, you know, I do not think there is no argument. As I understand the current political situation, there is no argument that is actually valid. That Kamala Harris and Trump share the same ideology. They just don't.
One study says there'll be 4 billion tons of additional US emissions by 2030, which you might think would be a big deal for the Green Party. If he's elected, all the gains that workers have made during the Biden-Harris administration, undeniable organizing gains, trade union gains, will be gone. If Trump is elected, we have another pandemic, people will die in their hundreds of thousands.
They're not dying now? The COVID is making a major comeback as we speak.
500,000 people died in the last year of Trump presidency. Please don't insult those people by saying that happens every presidency.
How is that an insult? There are lots of people dying
that was sui generis to Trump. You know that.
No
one else would have handled COVID like Trump. You know this.
We agree that the man is incompetent.
Okay.
No question.
So I'm asking about the policies.
Let me talk specifically.
Please.
Because we talk about the horrible things that Trump does, and then we see the Democrats adopt those policies on this issue
what I
of
read out to
expanding
you, you're
war.
not bothered by 10 million undocumented being targeted by the military, 4 billion additional carbon emissions, tons of carbon emissions.
Well, okay, let me speak to that.
Rights, please.
Because it is largely under Joe Biden that we have massively expanded these liquid natural gas export facilities.
Like at this point, it really feels like they know that they looked incredibly bad in the first part of this interview, and now they're just grasping at straws to try and like justify their current position. And like, guys, when it comes to COVID, like, yeah, we could be doing a lot better, but we kind of got fucked over by our initial response, and now we've had to live with the consequences of that. And honestly, to say that the Biden administration hasn't made any strides in dealing with it, and like, literally, this is not good news, but it is better. COVID drops to 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. 2 years ago, it was the 4th leading cause of death. It has literally dropped almost 70% in the last year. So.
On the Democrats.
Oh, it's horrible. So,
but it's worse under Trump. You never do the worst.
It's actually not.
Do we control Israel? Yes. We do, actually.
Always say they're the same.
In fact, I would
you think Trump has
that.
a better climate record than Kamala Harris and Joe Biden?
Well, I think that Biden exceeded Trump in terms of fossil fuel emissions, and the same is true for Obama having exceeded Bush. So we hear
a lot.
The man
says climate change is a hoax, and you think he's the same.
It's not about the rhetoric, it's about the policy.
Okay, so what is the Trump policy for the environment? To pull out of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, to increase oil and drilling.
Okay, nonetheless, that was his policy.
To deregulate.
And yet Joe Biden, who came in saying not another acre of public land.
You're confusing me with the wrong person. I'm not a defender of Joe Biden's climate record.
Well,
let me read to you. Let me read to you.
Like, it is quite funny that like Mehdi is just asking them hard questions, and they are reacting like he's being mean to them on purpose. When like he just wants a straight answer. Like just give him a straight answer. The interview will be fine.
Michael Mann says, no, every time I ask you something...
that somehow Trump is terrible and the Democrats are good. So I'm simply trying to school you. I am trying to school you to get beyond the rhetoric of the Democrats.
You said I say everything the Democrats say is fine. You should really watch this show, see the guests who come on the show.
What you said is
democracy. No, I'll tell you what I'm saying.
No, he's saying that they do... That they're a better alternative. Like, in a two-party system, they are the better option. That's what he's saying.
Trump's terrible.
I'll tell you what I'm saying.
I'll tell you what I'm saying.
This is exactly what I'm saying. Michael Mann, you know Michael Mann, he's a professor of climate science.
Prundo, literally, America is the entity that shields Israel from the diplomatic consequences of its actions. America is what supplies Israel with its weaponry and ammunition for things like the Iron Dome. America basically has propped up Israel for the last 60, 70 years because we want an ally in the region, and we want to be able to exert additional geopolitical pressure in that region by using Israel as a staging area. We have vetoed resolution after resolution in the UN. We give them the most out of all economic assistance, like, that we provide to other nations. Like, we are what prop up their entire society. Like, if we actually played hardball, which, by the way, other presidents in the past have done. Bill Clinton did it. Reagan did it. There are presidents going back that have played hardball with Israel and gotten them to immediately cease their activities. If we wanted to, we could do it. Yet they keep defying Biden and his red lines. Prundo, that's because Biden's red lines are a lie. I for a long time, I was under the impression that this was just, you know, a lot of diplomatic maneuvering can take time. This is just the gears of geopolitics turning. But the reality is that Joe Biden is a Zionist. He has been a Zionist. He has declared himself to be a Zionist publicly, recently, and that goes back. He signed merch for for Benjamin Netanyahu, like the last time they met. Like they are friends. The only conclusion you can arrive at this point is that Joe Biden believes that this is a good thing. He believes that what Israel is doing is inconvenient, of course, but he thinks ultimately and supports ultimately the Zionist project. He supports the settler colonial movement in Israel. That is what has allowed Israel, by the way, to ignore UN resolution after UN resolution after UN resolution, in order to effectively, like, build up their settlements that are illegal under international law. And he is what has allowed that to continue and to accelerate. So it really is, we have the influence over Israel. We are their one and only international ally at this point. No, Hundo, it's not that Biden is weak on this. It's that Biden supports it. That's the issue. The issue is that Biden allows this to happen because he supports what is happening. That is what the prospect that I am proposing here. That is the only explanation that actually makes sense. It's not that he's weak. It's that he supports what's happening. He just wishes it would happen in a way that makes him look a little bit better.
Just saying, as someone who got a candidate to change their stump speech. We can push people, if we are willing to do the work.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Lady Ringcloud, for the $5 dono. But the issue is, I'm not saying that the US controls Israel, but I am saying that we exert enormous international influence over Israel because we are effectively their only ally in the world because they've alienated every other nation on Earth. We are their lifeline to normalized relations with the rest of the world. We are their supplier of arms and ammunition. We are their effectively the people who station military carriers off their coast to make sure that there are no international repercussions for their actions. So, like, again, to say that we control Israel, we don't. They're not like a member of the United States. They're not one of the states, but on a geopolitical level, within the context of American empire, we exert overwhelming amounts of influence over their country. So all I'm saying here is that if Joe Biden wanted to, he could get on the phone with Benjamin Netanyahu, he could freeze all weapon shipments, and he could say, hey, Benjamin Netanyahu, you're done. We're not cutting you a blank check anymore. And this is not controversial. This is not just me saying it. A lot of geopolitical analysts say the same thing. My brain wanted to say analyzers, but that's not right. Like, that is simply the case. If we wanted to, we could make it happen. The issue is the person that needs to want it to happen is Joe Biden, and he is a lifelong committed Zionist. And that is kind of it. It is one of the only ideological positions that Joe Biden appears to hold deeply and truly in his heart. And it's deeply unfortunate for everyone involved, mostly for the Palestinians.
And a diehard Democrat.
At the University of Pennsylvania.
Yes, exactly. And a diehard
He says the
Democrat.
climate, I'm sure, that's the kind of thing Donald Trump says. He's a scientist. The climate is a great example of the perfect being the enemy of the good. With Harris, he says the record's not good. We have a fighting chance. With Trump, it's...
Fimby, Israel wouldn't get overrun like without U.S. support. Like, they have a very large military that is well equipped and has enough arms and ammunition to go for a while, but they could not operate indefinitely without U.S. support.
It's pretty close to game over.
We have
That's
a fighting
true, isn't it?
chance when we get out and make a fighting chance. Under Richard Nixon and his very conservative Supreme Court, we were active on
So you think you could
abortion
organize
rights.
under Trump to get climate action?
You can.
Well, not
Wow.
only climate action, on peace action, on anti-genocide.
Well, Rondo, in this case, it's very nearly true when it comes to Israel.
action.
While he invokes the Insurrection Act, shoots at protesters.
Movements go to die under Democratic
You think there's going to
rule,
be free
and we
protests under a
shut
second
down.
Trump term?
Well, we haven't seen them under Democrats. Under Democrats, these movements go
We
silent.
saw massive record protests for Gaza in this city.
We saw.
You think Donald Trump's going to allow that? He's going to deport
We
people.
saw university presidents being
But
deposed
did we not see
for saying
record
similar
protests,
things.
though, in this city?
Listen,
absolutely.
we absolutely saw
This
protests.
is a very
and we
strange
saw
argument. Your
we saw
argument is
protests under
Democrats are
Trump.
bad, which I agree with. Therefore, Trump can't be worse. Yes, he can.
No one is
He can
saying-
invoke the Insurrection
Hold on.
Act.
No, you literally earlier in this interview talked about how they were both fascists, that they were both bad. Now you're trying to backtrack and say, well, no, of course Trump would be worse.
One
But-
second.
The
which
Democrats
Harris
are
is
Mehdi,
not.
now
quickly
you're
catching
this
up
is
with
this
him.
is a
If they
plain
exceed
caricature.
You're both talking at the same time. One of you picks.
Okay, may I?
Yeah.
No one is saying that Trump cannot be worse, but
Sounds like you both are saying that. Sorry
no,
to say.
no one is actually in point of fact saying that. What we're saying is that we are not responsible for the Democrats' failures to create a meaningful alternative to Team Red. And the more that we do the work of actually...
But Rondo, that's the thing, right? They are able to influence our elections because for a very long time, Israeli policy and U.S. foreign policy were completely and utterly aligned. But powers that be in Israel realized that that would not always be the case. And so while those ideologies and geopolitical goals were aligned, they invested heavily into our political infrastructure. And because they did that, they built up a lot of people who were dependent on that campaign money. A lot of people who took it, seeing it as free funding for their campaign with no strings attached, because, frankly, they didn't think it was a check that would ever need to be cashed. They didn't think that there would ever come a day when they had to pay the piper, as it were. And unfortunately, they are now, our political establishment is now realizing that actually, oh, wait, the client state of the United States, Israel, actually does have a lot of sway over our politicians and actually will differ from our foreign policy goals. But now they've got a bunch of people who rely on their campaign money. And they have a political apparatus in the United States that is capable of exacting a price on politicians that do not align with them. And so the Israeli lobby is all... I hate to tell you this, Rondo, but the Israeli lobby in the U.S. is both U.S. evangelicals who want to see the state of Israel destroyed. That is certainly a part of it, but it is not the entirety of it. It is absolutely not the entirety of it. These are very specifically goals that are being put in place by foreign governments that want to influence U.S. policy. We have other groups like that. We have Turkish nationals who exert political influence in the United States. It's just that these Israeli lobbyists were able to do it in a smart way that was largely accepted by the political establishment. Unlike, for example, Turkey, who tried to get the New York City mayor on effectively their payroll. And they did it in a very not smart way that is now seeing Mayor Adams have his feet put to the fire. Okay? But what we're looking at is effectively like a divergence between the foreign policy of Israel and the foreign policy of the United States, something that has not happened for a very, very long time. And so what I'm trying to say here is that there is a lot of influence from groups like AIPAC, from other groups similar to it, that influence our politics and keep politicians in line. It's the same type of stuff. And again, I was on the ground, okay? I was on the ground this year, and I saw AIPAC money firsthand. It poured into that election. And it sank one of the most progressive members of Congress. Okay? It took millions and millions of dollars, but it did its job. And so what I'm trying to explain here is that there is an apparatus that tries to keep this all aligned. And Joe Biden, if he wanted to, could exert diplomatic and political pressure. Was that the Assad simp who got sunk? Prundo, no, but also you're now beginning to make me upset. God. My brain is cooked right now. I'm on the ground every year. Oh, to be a bird. Jesus. I don't know how to explain it better. I don't know how to explain it better. That there is a political relationship, an economic relationship, a military relationship, a geopolitical relationship between Israel and the United States. And that relationship is largely dictated by the United States. We are the global superpower. We are the lone global superpower. Okay? And I don't know how you're like, well, the United States isn't God or anything. And I'm not saying that they're God. I'm just saying that it's the global fucking superpower. We're the country that created banana republics because we had citizens that were just like, yeah, we're going to buy enough guns and go down and overthrow a government. And then we propped up those governments. So, like, I don't know what to tell you if you're denying the influence and power of a superpower on the geopolitical stage.
Actually providing a meaningful alternative for the American people. One, we will consolidate power in a third party, which will give Americans choice in future elections. And two, we will provide maximal leverage on the few adults that are left in the room on Team Blue that will hopefully push them to behave like responsible adults.
ACAB includes Tone Police. Thank you for being a member for the past 2 months. Appreciate that.
That's fine.
That's on them. That is not on us.
That's a washing of your hands.
That's on them. That is not on us.
So let's talk about record.
Mehdi, we are not going to build an alternative overnight. We're going to have to build it.
Right.
And that may mean getting to 5%, then 10,
and I'm going to come back to that point later in the interview, which we're running out of time on.
And what is really clear is that we are headed over the cliff right now, very clearly.
God, Jamal Bowman. I was trying to remember who I was on the ground for canvassing for just this year, and my brain is just so cooked I couldn't remember it. I've been focused on this too hard. Yeah, we were canvassing for Jamal Bowman.
Under Democrat policies as well as Republican.
And I think we're guaranteed over the cliff if a fascist comes in, a domestic terrorist, to quote Butch. So Jill, let me talk about some record stuff. Because let's put Donald Trump to one side for a moment. Let's talk about your record. We talked about how good your record has been on Gaza and how many Palestinians like you. But a lot of Syrians would say your record was as bad on Syria as it has been good on Gaza. Now you oppose a genocide, then you were indifferent to a genocide.
May I clarify?
Let me finish the question, and you can. You said in November 2015, as Assad and Putin were massacring Syrians in their tens of thousands, quote, the US should be working with Syria, Russia, and Iran to restore all of Syria to control by the government. That's the Assad government.
That was an unapproved statement, which was taken down the moment it was...
You seem to have a lot of things online that you don't approve that go out. We just
Storma, Russia and China like okay, maybe if you want to argue that Russia and China are superpowers, I would not. But if you want to make that argument, then I would say that the US is in a different class above them, the hyperpower. We're in a unipolar world, guys. Russia and China are definitely like up there in terms of power, but they are nowhere close to us.
Well,
this occasionally...
Two pretty big ones.
So
an endorsement of Trump and a support of genocide?
One from 2015 and an Instagram like? Come on, man. Be serious.
Yeah, really.
Be serious.
And this was all of one sentence in a press release that got posted on a website. I never, ever said anything in support of Assad.
You picked a running mate who was a supporter of Assad. The predecessor to Butch was a guy called Ajamu Baraka, who suggested Assad's election.
Sofita Loon, China isn't doing direct colonization, but I would argue that it's doing like a form of neocolonialism with its Belt and Road Initiative, which is certainly preferable to military colonialism. But it is also expanding and entering a period of economic crisis where it's turning more towards nationalism, doing saber rattling, building artificial islands to like expand its influence in the South China Sea. It's doing a lot to expand its influence because it has risen as I guess we'll adopt the hyperpower superpower distinction because it's risen to the status of a superpower or regional power. Would you call China fascist? I think it has a lot of fascistic qualities, yes. Maybe I would call it authoritarian in the process of turning towards fascism.
Victories were legitimate, and then went on a trip to Syria to see to go with a bunch of pro-Assad activists. That was your running mate. You can understand why Syrian Americans were a little bit upset with you.
Well, that was not a statement on my behalf. I have not been to Syria. I have not said a thing in support of Assad, and we clarified immediately. It was covered by The Hill that that was a mistake. We took it down, we apologized for it, and made clear that we strongly support the sovereignty and exactly of the Syrian people to determine their future.
Do you have any qualms as a Muslim American about running alongside someone who a lot of Muslim Americans, especially Syrian Americans, have publicly criticized for the stance on Assad?
Absolutely not. The first set of phone calls that I made when this offer was extended to me was in the Palestinian community, the Arab American community. I taught at the University of Michigan.
The Syrian American community?
Yes, absolutely. And the questions were posed to me, and I asked Jill pointedly.
Yeah, these answers are not. I think that usually when not confronted directly, Green Party candidates like Stein are able to project like kind of this authenticity. But I'm not picking that up right now.
About this and was given exactly this answer. When I actually showed them the documentation, all of the people that had questions, their fears were assuaged. So I went in with an absolutely clear conscience on this question. I 100% believe in Jill's position with respect to not just Palestinian Americans, but with respect to Muslims' right to self-determination. And I believe in those things because when I asked her in an Instagram Live about what the overall foreign policy vision of Jill Stein was, it was actually about dismantling.
I'm sorry, what?
I 100% believe in Jill's position with respect to not just Palestinian Americans, but with respect to Muslims' right to self-determination. And I believe in those things because when I asked her in an Instagram Live...
You asked her this in an Instagram Live? That's where you figured... That's where you hashed this out? Not in a conversation that wasn't being broadcast? Like you weren't able to ask her that behind closed doors? It was in an you only got this answer in an Instagram Live conversation? That is bizarre. You're running for the presidency together.
About what the overall foreign policy vision of Jill Stein was. It was actually about dismantling these imperial apparatuses that have tormented Muslims for so long. The Iraq War, Afghanistan War. And just so you know, we will be going, I won't mention what particular day, but we will be on 9/11. We will be in Michigan. to do a 9/11 memorial march, and we will talk about the dreadful consequences of this tragic day, and we will have a moment of silence for all of those lost souls, and then we will have a moment of silence for the hundreds.
Oh, maybe it was before he had a spot on the ticket, but like, still seems weird.
Of thousands of people who had their lives taken.
Like, it's also equally weird to just choose someone to be your vice president because of how you interacted on an Instagram live.
Unjustly in the imperialist extractive wars
so
that were fought in those names.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because
Millions,
you have
thank
been
you.
very eloquent and bold. We began the interview with me saying you have the strongest position on Gaza by a mile.
Yes.
But it's easy to condemn what, you know, America is doing. The critics are saying it's what Russia or Syria does that you haven't condemned, and they point out, as you know, that you went to Russia in December 2015. You sat at a table
Lady
briefly
Ringcloud?
with Vladimir
Oh my
Putin.
goodness.
It is very okay to not like these two. I've literally been ranting about how disingenuous their rhetoric is when compared to their function in this election.
Oh
the
my
height of the
goodness.
Syria
I did
war,
what JFK said.
In the wake of his illegal annexation of Crimea, you didn't harshly criticize Putin, they say. In fact, you put out a video of you in Moscow.
Oh shit, it's this part of the debate. This part of the interview. Oh shit, this is so good. I've seen one clip of this. Let's go. I want to see how Mehdi continues to follow up.
In Red Square, harshly criticizing not Putin, but American foreign policy in Russia. You didn't criticize Russia in
No,
that video.
actually, I
you criticized America. Not in that video, 2.5-minute video you put out from Red Square. You said America, I've got it here, I've got the transcript. You said you called out US exceptionalism. You said we need to respect and replace a US policy of domination, all of which I agree with, by the way. But in Moscow, shouldn't you say something about the Russian
Wait, what? Foxbat. Jill Stein's running mate called Mehdi Hasan a house N-word? Oh my god.
And in fact, I did. And had the speech not been taken down, it lived on the internet on the RT channel. My remarks. See
You called out the Russian policy.
Let her finish.
Yes, I actually did call that out. And
Go ahead.
yes, it is a Clinton hit job. And that video was, you know, was a posting on social media. The actual purpose of that visit was to address a conference of media from around the
Well,
world.
it was a Russia Today conference, which is a propaganda channel for Putin. I mean,
Well,
it was some neutral
yes,
conference.
in the same way that the BBC is a propaganda channel for
It's
the
not the
UK.
same.
MSNBC
It's
is
not
a
the same.
propaganda
Yes.
channel.
It's not the same way.
We all
MSNBC is a propaganda.
I'm pretty sure Mehdi Hasan has worked with the BBC. I'm pretty sure he knows that it is not run like a propaganda outlet.
The channel for Team Blue.
We have our yes, but aren't the American people entitled to decide, you know, what propaganda they're going to
I'm
listen
not saying
to?
you shouldn't. I'm not
Yes,
saying you should be
and
banned from that. I'm just wondering why you went.
when our corporate media will not cover us, yes, then we do have to embrace whatever media we
And
can
you didn't
get.
feel you should criticize Putin while he was
Actually,
there?
I did.
To his face?
She did criticize
Yes,
Putin.
What did you say to him?
So he was not at that conference, but he heard it.
He was sitting 3 feet away.
That was not the conference.
I know,
that
you were
was a
sitting at a
dinner afterwards.
So why not say something?
There were
even
no
a translator at
translators.
that
There was
table.
no
They-
Vladimir
introduction.
Putin speaks English.
He was there for.
This is such a bad look. Like, oh, we didn't have any translators at the table, so, you know, there's no way he could have communicated with us. He speaks English, guys. We've literally seen him speak English. Oh, Coder Joe, links don't work in Twitch chat. Sorry to say.
.5 minutes before he gave a speech in Russian. Yeah.
If Joe Biden was sitting at a table with you 5 minutes, you wouldn't call him out on Gaza? If
no,
Benjamin Netanyahu was sitting at a table with you, you wouldn't call him out?
But if he is unavailable, if he's across the table and there's just screaming noise, what, you're going to go shout over
You're
the
telling me if you sat...
Oh my god. This just 2 days ago, fresh from attacking Noura Erakat, Jill Stein and Butch Ware are now attacking me as a rat, house N-word, and FBI agent, no less. What a great way to help the Palestinians and stop the genocide. The Greens truly leading the way for the left and Muslims. And for Muslims. Damn, dude. These people suck.
Sat at a
Tried.
table with Joe Biden and Benjamin Netanyahu for 5 minutes, you wouldn't say anything
Well,
to them.
this is why I
Sitting
made the
next to his
point
main
to
spokesman.
focus my speech on these remarks
right.
and to criticize Russia
right.
for basically
not to-
following in
You
the
put-
U.S.
So here's what
footsteps
bothers
by
a
bombing
lot.
Syria.
Here's what. Let me
Yeah.
finish this conversation.
if I can
Hold on, I
understand,
need to talk
though.
about Russia, and I'll bring you in because
Okay,
you
go
weren't
on.
there. With respect, Jill was.
That's fair.
On the day you posted that video, on the 17th of December 2015, Russian warplanes bombed a residential area in Aleppo, killed 8 people, including 4 kids. 10 days after you went to that dinner in Russia, on 20th of December, Russian warplanes bombed a marketplace in Idlib, killed over 40 Syrian people in the area. Did you ever condemn any of that?
Yes,
Did you feel
absolutely.
bad about being in
Yes.
Russia, talking about peace while they're dropping bombs?
Well, that was the point of that was one of
It
the
didn't
points
work, did it?
in my actual remarks. Well, whose has worked? Yes, but you know, I was also on that in that same trip. I was in Paris talking with Jeremy Corbyn. I was talking with the Chinese deputy negotiator on climate. So am I going to change the world by having a 1-minute conversation with world leaders? No, and more often than not, you can't even get their attention. But what I was able to do was to put on record 3 issues, 3 top issues. One was a global Green New Deal. A second was a peace offensive in the Middle East and actually withholding weapons from this madness and this perpetual war in the Middle East.
We looked at your social media, and you haven't done that many posts specifically calling out Russian attacks on civilian areas. You haven't called Vladimir Putin a war criminal, but you have called Benjamin Netanyahu a
No,
war
actually
criminal.
we did.
Yeah.
In my very first remarks about the Ukraine war, we condemned...
Vladimir Putin's a war criminal in your view.
Yes, we did
And Bashar
condemn...
al-Assad's a war criminal.
Yes, in so many words. Yes, we
What does
have
that mean
said
in
as
so many
much.
words?
So...
You called Netanyahu one, which I think he is.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
is Putin a war criminal?
So what we said about Putin was that his invasion of Ukraine is criminal. It's a criminal and murderous war.
And he's a war criminal who should be on trial.
Well, by implication...
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say those words. He's a criminal, and he's at war, but is he a war criminal? I wouldn't say that.
By implication.
You're struggling here to say something very simple. This is why people have their doubts about you in Russia.
Well,
Why is
let me
Benjamin
say-
Netanyahu a war criminal but not Vladimir Putin?
Well, as John F. Kennedy said, we must not be afraid to, we must not negotiate out of fear, and we must not fear to negotiate. So if you want to be an effective world leader, you don't start by name-calling and hurling
So
epithets.
how will President Stein negotiate with Israel then if you've called Netanyahu a war criminal?
Well, because he very clearly is a
Oh, so
war
Putin
criminal.
clearly isn't a war criminal.
Well, we don't have a decision, put it this way, by the International Criminal Court.
Yes, we do.
For
Yes, actually,
his arrest.
actually you're wrong. There's an
Oh,
arrest
and
warrant for
the-
Putin.
for
There
the-
isn't yet an arrest warrant for Netanyahu. So
Yeah.
why is Putin not a war criminal but Netanyahu is?
Yeah.
I think
well,
they both
let
are.
me say,
You
let
don't.
me,
We're witnessing a murder right now.
Well, let me say this. We are sponsoring that war. We are sponsoring Netanyahu.
That's our war.
He is our dog in this fight. That is why we have a responsibility.
No disagreement
to
from
pull
me at
him
all.
back.
But that
With
does
Russia,
not answer
it's-
my question.
With Russia, it's
Whether
far
we
more
sponsor them or not
complicated.
is irrelevant. Either you're a war criminal or you're not. Is
Actually,
Vladimir Putin a
hold
war
on.
criminal?
In so many words, yes, he is.
I don't know what so many words are. Butch, is Vladimir Putin a war criminal?
Let me say that whatever you think he is, if you want to pull
It's not
him
about what I
back...
think. I'm asking what you
well,
think. You're running for president.
if you
I'm
are
not.
a world leader, you don't begin your conversation by calling someone a war criminal unless
So why
you
have you called
a
Biden
clear,
and Netanyahu war criminals?
Because we have a clear strategy and we
Doesn't
have
make
a
any sense
very
to me.
strong
Butch, is
support
Bashar
across the world
al-Assad and Vladimir
community.
Putin war criminals in your view?
In my humble opinion, as an individual, I would class their actions as criminal without any question. What I would say also in response to affirm my sister soldier, Dr. Jill Stein's point, is that we have a differential relationship of responsibility, okay? The differential relationship of responsibility is as follows. This is our genocide in Gaza. Israel is our landed aircraft carrier. We provide 70% of the arms and munitions. Everyone wants to pin this on Netanyahu and the right wing in the Zionist entity, but in point of fact, this is an American genocide. And therefore, we have a different kind of responsibility to call out people that are in our own house. We clean our own house first. And if we are running for leaders of the free world, as you say, without the qualifications, then there is no point in pissing.
Okay, I'm unaware of the connotation of sister soldier.
In Vladimir Putin's cereal.
Okay.
And can
Let
I
me-
add
let's-
that
let's-
we have ginned up that war in Ukraine. We had everything to do
oh,
with
I-
the coup in 2014.
I'm not saying we haven't. That
so
wasn't
it
my
is
question.
not
That doesn't
clear-cut.
excuse
In
Well, no,
Israel,
that's
it's
not-
pretty clear cut
that's not how war
that
crimes
there is
work.
a murderous,
With respect, Jill Stein, that's not how war crimes work.
genocide
It does-
going on.
War crimes are war
which
crimes
to me-
regardless of who commits them.
Well,
But
if
that's
we
my
were
position
to call
under
out
international
every
law.
war criminal, we would also have to be calling out Barack Obama.
Yep.
We
And
have
we
to
can.
call out Dick Cheney.
Yeah. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in favor of that. Yes, actually.
We can.
I mean, there's just a
I
whole...
have.
And George
I
Bush.
have. All
I
three
have.
of us
I
have,
have.
but it seems to me I'm the only one who's willing to call out Putin at this table.
Wait,
Let
hold
me
up.
ask
You didn't hear me? I answered the
said
question.
crimes. You didn't say him.
No, I said that they were both criminal. I said
Okay, good.
And
Jill-
I
Jill
have
Stein
called
didn't.
him a criminal as well.
Okay, good.
Yes, okay,
Yes.
so
But is he a war criminal? Because you seem to still be dancing around that particular label.
Move on
Yes.
from there.
Like almost like someone told you under no circumstances could you say that he was a war criminal.
Hard
but
work
I
getting
don't-
to this.
I don't
understand
think
the point you're
that
making, although I don't
so
moves
agree.
us
many
forward
words.
in solving the war in Ukraine. We need to sit down and we need to negotiate without name calling.
I agree on
and,
that.
and I take
Let's
that very
talk-
seriously. And I
Before
think
we
it's
run out of time,
important
let's talk
not
domestic-
to disrupt our chance at peace here by name calling.
Thank you.
Let's talk domestic policy. Butch Ware, Gaza aside,
Yes.
what would you say is the policy issue you believe your platform is best on compared to the Democrats or the Republicans?
yeah.
Oh, no, Somniostatic. Their position is that Russia does want to negotiate, in fact, and that it is the West and Ukraine that are refusing or pressuring Ukraine away from the negotiating table. When in reality, the only peace deals that Russia has offered Ukraine are effectively, demilitarizing the entire country and ceding ground currently held by Russian forces, and a promise to remain demilitarized for the foreseeable future, which just sets them up to be taken over very easily in, a year or two. It is not an actual peace deal.
So the way that I would answer this question actually emerges from the first conversation that Jill and I had. And Jill was giving a layout of two things. So first, I'll just provide a little bit of background, and then I'll answer the question directly. So I had just made a post about Kamala Harris and how Kamala Harris had been asked a question about
Peace
reparations.
cannot be achieved if we
and
call
she
Putin a
danced
poopy
around
head.
the topic for a full 2 minutes, and then she said specifically, I will never do anything that only helps black people. That's the way that she said it. So I asked Jill about reparations, and Jill said they act as though it's an incalculable amount, but it's been calculated many times by specialists. It's between $10 and $13 trillion US, and I'm in favor of cash payments to the descendants of the enslaved. Powerful, right? So from the beginning, a conversation about transformative intervention to alleviate the wealth gap in African-American communities. But the real answer to your question actually came when we were talking about drug policy, okay? And when Dr. Jill started to talk about how we treat the drug crisis in America now as a Green Party, as a public health problem rather than a problem to be solved by the carceral state, I mentioned the fact that my wife is Mexican-American because Jill said that if you actually legalize these substances, you disempower the cartels in Central America that are responsible for all of these political assassinations. You take away a lot of the push factor that is involved in the so-called migration crisis. And immediately my head starts to turn and I'm like, oh my God, we have a magic bullet that solves the problem.
Oh, but my point, my larger point, Hundo, is that Russia's other claims are largely irrelevant because they want the demilitarization of Ukraine so they can just take all of it later. Like the other points are really irrelevant when that's the actual aim of their negotiation.
Of my cousin being locked up for 3 years on petty drug charges, right? And that solved my wife's problem of her mom not being able to see her brother for 23 years because she came here undocumented. That if we just take a simple common sense solution that is good for white folks in Appalachia, right? Okay. We treat drugs as a public health problem, then we can take the carceral state, migration policy, and social housing all in one, and we treat this with domestic policies that actually serve the American people rather than serve the 1%.
So let me repeat, before we run out of time, let me repeat what I said at the start of this interview, which feels like a long time ago. Your policies, a lot of your policies are great.
Yes.
You said earlier about Noura Erakat, maybe she doesn't understand how politics works. Do you understand how politics works, Jill Stein? Because these are great policies. Medicare for all, higher taxes on the wealthy, student debt forgiveness, a higher minimum wage, all on the Green Party website. I looked at it, I said, great, love this. But how do you get them passed into law? Let's say you win the presidency, which I don't think you can. But let's say you do by some miracle. Biden, to be fair, tried to do a lot of that stuff. Yes, he did.
Well,
yes, he tried to. He literally put a bill in the Senate for the minimum wage.
Within
and
the current
Kirsten
system?
Sinema put a thumbs down.
Oh, sure.
And 8 Democrats joined with a bunch of Republicans to basically screw over
in the
bill
current
that
system, which
so,
is
so hold on, if Biden couldn't get it past his own party, the Republicans, they hate, both parties hate you. How are you going to get through Congress
remember when Barack Obama got elected, you know, with his army of grassroots advocates, he basically sent them home when he appointed Larry Summers as his Treasury Secretary. And it was clear whose interests he is serving and did serve. And that goes true down the line of Democrats. This is a bought and paid for political system. So it's very hard.
To be fair, they did try and do a lot of this stuff. Biden tried to do student debt. The Supreme Court stopped him. You know that.
He tried, but through a very fallible mechanism that was a setup for being stopped by the Supreme Court. But suffice it to say, it's very hard to move anything through that system. And we know from, you know, academic studies and just the real world that it is not the interests of everyday people for health care, for housing, for education. That doesn't matter one bit. You know, it's serving big donors that does. But what we will do is we will enact some really critical measures that the president has authority over just by virtue of the bully pulpit. So let me tell you what we will do. On day one, we will undertake an antitrust lawsuit against the consolidated corporate media so that we can break up media and encourage independent reporting like what we're seeing here and relieve that bar of censorship because...
Again, I'm not terribly interested in the ideas that they're pushing, mostly because I've heard most of them before. I'm open to new ones, of course, but they don't actually have to implement any of these. You know, like it's really easy to say, yeah, well, we'll just do X, Y, and Z, and then but not have like a plan to actually get from point A to point B on any of those issues, you know?
The First Amendment is first for very good reasons. If
so
we
do that via executive order because you're not going to get a bill.
Well, no, but you can get your Department of Justice to basically undertake
the
case.
But in the things I mentioned, which will help Medicare for all.
So let me get to that. We will also once again begin town hall meetings, which have been ended. They really don't take place now because politicians are too busy talking to their donors, not to their constituents. So we will shame politicians.
I mean, the bully pulpit is fine to use. It's great to use the bully pulpit effectively. You can do that, but that is not enough when it comes to actually wielding political power. Like if you only have the bully pulpit in your pocket, you are in a really dog shit political position.
Into having to meet with their...
Have you met some of these politicians? You can't shame the shameless.
Yes, well, wait a minute. But when you have the bully pulpit,
to be fair to the Democrats again,
you can name names.
There was a massive campaign, as you know, Jill Stein, for voting rights, right? For voting rights. There was a massive grassroots campaign across the country, and yet Joe Manchin, one guy, blocked voting rights reform.
Who gave Joe Manchin power? I mean, this is why we have to put power back into the hands of people, which is why I want to name two things here.
Yeah, like, a lot of this is... I'm not seeing the connection between town hall meetings and healthcare getting passed. I think there's a lot of other things you could do.
One is town hall meetings, and the other one is congressional hearings.
That's right.
And likewise, decorporatizing the media.
Congressional hearings, you don't have any parties in Congress. You haven't. See, that's one of the criticisms of the Green Party, is that you run for president every 4 years, but you've not built up a presence in state legislatures.
Mehdi,
hold on, let me finish your question. Gubernatorial offices?
To that? Yes.
Please speak to it.
Yes.
Or in
I'm not against the idea of like mandating certain amounts of town halls for constituents. I'm not against that idea. I just don't really know how that would get us Medicare for all.
Federal legislature in Congress,
but what we have
Jill Stein runs every 4 years.
So let me say,
but where is the building?
So we have tripled our vote for one thing from 2012
exactly
to 2016.
First
but let me say
got
beyond that. What are you comparing us to? You've got to compare us to other grassroots parties that are not corrupted, that do not take the money.
The Green Party in Germany is in government, in England is in parliament.
Well,
Green parties around the world do.
You have to compare us to other third parties in the U.S. You know, all of those vibrant and successful third-party movements that are building up local power. You know, all of those.
serious parties. You're
but
not
we
seen
do.
as a
Well,
serious
we do
party.
not have proportional representation here in this country.
Nor does the UK.
So small parties, grassroots, people-powered parties in this country are dead within 10 years. They're done. So they don't even have an opportunity to
But
build.
by that logic, why run for president then?
Because we have to. Because we're going.
But that's kind of the issue I have here, is that I understand that it can take time to build a movement, but the movement she is presiding over is actively weakening and is significantly weaker than it was 10 years ago. So you're also not doing your job.
Over the cliff because we need to stop the genocide.
But wouldn't you be in a stronger
because we can't keep spending our money on
Actually,
the
Butch, before you add, I'm just going to add one more data point and then you deal with both.
Yeah, okay.
The argument is that you haven't built up a presence.
No, that's entirely wrong. We have built up a presence. We
How
are
many
the
state legislators
alternative.
do you have?
Also, just as an FYI, I believe that there are currently more elected libertarians in office right now than there are elected Green Party members, and that's just embarrassing.
So we have over 1,500 local elected.
That's not what I asked.
So wait a minute, this is about building.
That's not
We
what I
have
asked.
been
How
on
many
the ballot
state
for
legislators
20
do you
years.
have?
The next best compared to us is the Peace and Freedom
Jill
Party,
Stein, with
which had
respect,
14 ballot lines, which they
I don't
lost
like
20
interrupting you,
years
but you're answering the
ago.
question. How
Yeah, it's not a good look when she's not answering the question.
many state legislators do you have?
We're
So we have
Let her
had a
answer the
couple.
question.
We have had a handful.
But right now.
But let's say we need to stop the Democratic Party from throwing us off the ballot.
Okay.
We need to stop
That-
the Democratic Party.
So let me add
from
a data
hanging on
point,
to
and then
our
bring in
public
Butch, who's
funding.
waiting patiently.
We can fix this, but we need to get the word out, because when we do get the word out,
we
the
put
public
you here
resonates.
for an hour to get the word out.
And we need to multiply this 1,000 times.
Understood.
That's right.
So,
That's
Butch,
right.
And this is how
Butch,
we
the
get
argument
there.
is you don't have any members of state legislatures, you don't have any members of Congress, you don't have any governors. So even if you were
Maybe
somehow
this
to
is
get
how we
into
get
the
there.
presidency, you don't have that organized elected movement that you need. You can't just have people on the streets. You need lawmakers.
course.
And you've joined a party
Yep.
which has shrunk over 20 years.
Yeah.
You had the Green Party had 319.
Finally, I'm so glad that Mehdi is bringing this up. I'm so glad. This is why Mehdi's the GOAT.
1,000 members in 2004.
Yeah.
Today it has 245,000 members. Instead of growing, you've shrunk.
Yeah, so you're talking about the kind of, first golden era of the Green Party with Ralph Nader at its head. What I would say, just to be clear, is that I joined this struggle for the long term. I came to this office from scouting.
Again, I don't understand how they expect this. I don't understand how they expect the Green Party to survive a Trump administration.
Out our national headquarters here in Washington, D.C. You are going to get sick of seeing me around here, Mehdi. You're going to get sick of seeing Dr. Jill
We'll
around
have
here.
the discussion
That
anytime
this is a moment where all of the years that the Green Party...
I mean, Jill Stein's 74 years old. I don't know if we'll have to be sick of seeing her around for that much longer.
has been doing work. People like Annie Young, Park and Recreation Board in the city of Minneapolis for 20 plus years, a public servant. We've got public servants like that all over this country that have never had the kind of shine on their work that they are now seeing. So we are already having the conversations about the congressional runs, the gubernatorial runs. And if, as you say, we only have that 1 in 1,000 shot at the chin of Trump, right? And let's say...
It is not a 1 in 1,000 shot. There is no universe in which the numbers that are currently up there, like, result in the Green Party winning. Let me correct myself. Let me correct myself. If the United States gets struck by a meteor, or like all of our nukes blow up simultaneously, maybe that would also take out all of the major political parties, and then the remnants of humanity that wander the wastes might elect the Green Party. So 0.00000000000001%. There we go.
We miss. Let's say we don't land that punch. Let's say we don't get the Muhammad Ali versus Sonny Liston outcome that I, as a black Muslim, believe we have a shot at getting. What's to stop Dr. Jill Stein or Professor Butch Ware from running for a gubernatorial position or a congressional position in an off-year election. I am in this fight. We are in this fight to build power.
I think a lot of your critics would say they wish you'd been doing that all these years instead of these pointless presidential races.
That takes resources, brother, and you know that these people are outspending us a million to one.
Last question to you, Jill Stein. I don't think, and most people don't think, and I suspect neither of you think you're going to win the presidency in November, but you are making a lot of noise. You are getting a lot of new supporters, especially over Gaza. What do you plan to do with the new support you've got beyond November? Butch touched at it. What is your plan for growth?
So, you know, generically, we're going to be very focused on local races.
That's right.
And bringing these new constituents who are newly politically active, who are newly active in grassroots politics, to basically help build leadership, to help build candidates and help build networks to support them. So they will be starting mainly at the local level, but we will be building up from there. This is the first time, you know, the Green Party has been ahead of the...
See, I might believe someone if they weren't Jill Stein on this issue. Jill Stein has been active in the Green Party for a long time and has basically been overseeing its decline. So I don't believe that she has the ability to turn it around.
Curve on climate change,
right.
on militarism, on genocide, on Medicare,
land back, social housing.
And Medicare for All, which was launched by Ralph Nader. Actually, the whole progressive democratic agenda was launched by the Green Party.
So we're going to build on that.
We absolutely will.
So,
and the progress that we have made so far is not trivial, and it's not to be discounted. And it's been made against an extremely steep playing field that's controlled by
the playing field is bad. But the playing field is where we are, and it's a playing field that could deliver us Trump or Harris. I'm going to try one last time. One last time. I'll give you the last word. I asked you this in 2016, and it went horribly badly afterwards. Let me ask you this again. Would you tell your supporters at home, vote Green everywhere, but in those 3 swing states, vote against a domestic terrorist?
I would say it's very important for us to stand up and demand the democracy that we deserve. We should not be in the business of endorsing genocide. And I would say forget the lesser evil. Good luck figuring out which one is the greater evil when one of them is doing a genocide right now.
I think the other one may do it in the future. And domestic terrorism. That's the problem. We'll have to leave it there.
I'm sorry if someone watching has any affinity for these two, but like, that was such a Weasley thing to say. It was such a Weasley thing to say. She couldn't even bring herself. Like, on one side, you have a domestic terrorist that tried to overthrow democracy, who is also a fascist. And on the other, you have a liberal. It's not a hard calculation.
I was giving Jill Stein the last word.
I think we have domestic terrorism right now when we have 80 cop cities that are being built around the country.
You can't say they're all the same all the time. Jill Stein,
I'm not saying they are the same, but
you are. You literally are, though. You're like, oh, what? We're already in fascism. They're building 80 cop cities right now, and it's like, well, do you think again? We have 2 options. We have 2 options. We have the cards we're dealt. You can't be like, yes, Trump may be a domestic terrorist and a fascist, but you know, we're right now we're overseeing a genocide, and there are 80 cop cities, and like listing off facts that are undeniably awful and bad. But then when like confronted about that, you're like, oh, well, I'm not saying that, you know, the current administration is worse than a Trump one, but that is what you're saying, though. Like, you're just being weaselly with your rhetoric. You're not being honest about your position.
But they're not different enough, and if we
this is
want
what you said to me in 2016.
And we've been
These are the exact words, and we got Trump.
We've been proven absolutely right.
I think I was proven right. We got Donald Trump.
The Democrats continue to give us Trump.
Okay, we'll both be right, but people will suffer.
We can both be right.
Let's end on that note. Jill Stein.
They're laughing like it's a game. They're laughing like it's a game, dog. Lives are literally in the balance here. The lives of people in Palestine, the lives of people in the United States, the lives of people in countries where crises are going to be brewing in the near future. And I am furious at these two.
Butch Ware, thank you so much for your time. We do appreciate it.
It was fun.
Great talking.
Thank you.
It was fun, yeah.
Did you like this video?
Yeah, it was fun. It was fun, says guy who immediately went on to call Mehdi Hasan a rat and a house N-word and an FBI agent. I don't think he had fun. I'm picking up on some subtle context clues. That was incredible. And I do hope that we get this content out there. And I hope my yapping added to it. Added important context here. Because these people functionally are here to not rig the election, but they're functionally here to tilt the election towards Trump. That is their function in this election. That is functionally how they, as an organization, comport themselves. They are not functionally working to build state and local power, despite the rhetoric here towards the end of that interview. The rhetoric is easy for them. They just say what they think lefties will like. They adjust their message accordingly. And then they never actually have to deliver on it, because they never get into positions of power where they have to actually legislate. Again, you can't just look at the words. You actually have to look at how they function in our context, and their function is abhorrently bad. So I hope that this gets out there to more people who are considering voting for Jill Stein, because I think she's taking you for a ride. And I don't know why. I'm not going to speculate as to why. But I think that we need to wake up to the actual function of her candidacy in this election cycle.